Good. Good.
Good evening, everyone. The time is 6 o'clock, and we're calling tonight's meeting of the Providence School Board to order. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Erling Robo,
Here.
Travis Escobar, Tyrell Stevens, Mike G. Mahingable,
Present.
Tony Aiken,
Here.
George Matuk,
Here.
Melissa Hughes,
Present.
Angel Newman, and Michael Lima.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have a quorum.
So good.
Next, if you're able to, can you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we have Superintendent's comments. Superintendent?
Thank you. Can you hear me now? Thank you and welcome all. Good evening, President Rogel, members of the school board, and our PTSD community. Thank you for being here as always. I appreciate you taking time out of your day and be here with us and making sure that we continue creating the district that we deserve. I would like to start by saying that the spring is normally a time for rebirth and optimism. Tonight, I feel the weight of some very difficult decisions that we have to make as a district. I want you to know that because of expiring COVID funds, declining school enrollment, level funding from the city, and increasing student needs, we're obligated to make deep cuts to the district. We do not take these decisions lightly, but we are facing real-world financial constraints. I feel that the public should be aware that the non-renewals being heard during the executive sessions tonight ascend from financial considerations, and they do not reflect any performance on the educators or the administrators. Please, I need you to understand that this is not about job performance. This is about some serious cuts that we have to do, and they're very difficult decisions that we have to make. And I know how tough this is for our community. This is a non-win-win situation for either side. We have, though, encouraged the displaced employees to please apply for other jobs in the district. We have and will continue to support them in their pursuit of other job positions in the district. With the district facing almost $15 to $30 million shortfall for next school year, PPSD will continue to prioritize students' needs, but we must restructure and eliminate a number of positions. PPSD is issued notice to 39 central administrative staff members as part of the consolidation and restructuring efforts in the central office. The restructuring efforts are aligned with the continuous effort to prioritize the school level investment and make central administration more streamlined, efficient, and responsive to the school needs. We will close 47 vacancies in total. These reductions will serve the district and save the district at approximately $4.6 million. And that is tough, that we have to make decisions because we don't have the finances that we need, but also we have to make sure that we support those who have been in Providence, working in Providence for years. How do we support them as we continue to move forward, and making sure that we do the right decision for our kids? As always, my heart is always for our kids. I would like to give you some additional updates. I'm a little choking here because this is difficult decisions that we have to make. So please bear with me when I speak about these positions that we have to eliminate and the people that we are affecting lives. These are not just a position, these are people as well. I would also like to share with you that this month I was joined by educators and educators and advocates for the educational equity. I was as I welcomed these individuals to the amazing, it was a 2-day Rise Up Equity Conference here in Providence. And as I spoke at the event, I was reminded of the profound impact that each of us have on the lives of our students and the future of our society. I would also like to say a big thank you to Dr. Onye for her dedication in advancing educational equity and justice in our community. So can we please give Ms. I would also like to share with you multiple student achievements. I also want to share that a heartwarming and a memorable day not too long ago, I watched PCTA students present a life-size Pepper Pig playhouse to a young girl battling a very serious illness. The CTE students created the house for the young girl, and it was amazing. Her smile lit up the room. But I must also say that it wasn't just our students at PCTA. There were students from multiple communities, students from different districts, and there were at least 20 or 30 different houses built for students that were going through something very going through very difficult times in their life. And our students in the CTE programs just brought a ray of sunshine and joy to these individuals. So please, let's give our students and also the students around other districts of the also like to share that PCTA senior Naomi Felix has been named as the national semi-finalist U.S. Presidential CTE Scholar. So please continue. The CTE office was awarded the One Providence grant to provide stipends for CTE students participating in a workforce development program this summer at the Rhode Island Nursing Educational Center for students at Central High School and PCTA as well. We also have, and this is amazing for us, we have 2 educators being honored by the Red Sox Foundation STEM Education this spring. We have Mr. Nate Huffman, the CTE welding teacher at PCTA, and Ann Grimes, computer science teacher at Nathaniel Green, who are also being recognized. So please let's give those educators. We have 7 students being selected for a full dual enrollment New England Tech for the year 2025, paving the way to complete and earn a high school diploma and full year college credits. So those 7 students also deserve a big round of applause. Our spring break, during the spring break camp that we had during the vacation week, we had over 1,000 elementary and middle school students registered and attended, and over 500 participated in enrichment academic activities. These initiatives plays a vital role in providing additional educational opportunities and fostering the culture of continuous learning within our district. Some updates on facilities I would like to share. Exciting construction updates. Pleasant View students and staff will be moving back to their home to the newly remodeled Pleasant View Elementary School this summer. Mary Fogarty Elementary School will be moving to Laurel Hill, what was the old Spaziano location, while Fogarty goes under construction. Harry Kazarian Elementary School will also be moving into the Narducci Learning Center, and these are like swing space, while their buildings are also being under construction. And also, we're looking forward for November of 2024 when Classical High School's projects will be finished across the street. We have been working for quite some time, so those should be done by November of 2024. I would also like to take a moment to invite you all to the Eat, Play, Learn Summer Opportunity Fair, which is Saturday, April 27th. Join us from 10 to 12 p.m. at the PCTA and learn about the summer programs and summer jobs for our Providence youth. families will also be able to register their children for the programs that day. Also, this is a lovely time and a moment for all of us to celebrate. We have Beat the Street. We're joined with them tonight for some individual students who are trailblazers, athletes from Beat the Street. While Beat the Street wrestlers have been beating and pinning competitions for years, tonight we celebrate the program girls. I know we have some of the girls here. Can you please stand up? If you're from Beat the Street, please stand up. Let's give them a big round of these fabulous athletes, because these girls have won the championship at various levels. This is why we're recognizing. I know there was only about 4 or 5 of them here, but I'm sure we have close to how many?
It's like 20.
About 20 students. So let's give a round of applause for those that are not here. And in closing, I'm extending my deepest gratitude to each of you for your unwavering commitment, coming out, supporting us, and creating the district that our children deserve. This is not a job that can be done by one individual. It takes all of us. It takes our community. It takes our school board. It takes our teachers, you name it, everyone in the district. Because to me, it always takes a village to do the work, and one person cannot do it. So thank you for always being here with us and supporting the work that we do. So, President, I'll pass it over back to you.
Thank you, Superintendent. Next, I believe we have a substitution that we have to make before we can approve the agenda.
Thank you.
Council, can you please just give us a brief explanation of what we're substituting tonight?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So before you tonight is a substitute of the resolution regarding ELL services. It's item 7.7 on your agenda. This would be a small amendment modifying some of the terminology contained in that resolution so that it mirrors our Department of Justice settlement agreement and references some documents that we've promulgated since that time, including the MLL student rights.
Thank you,
So
Council.
that's the purpose of the amendment.
Mr. Stevens, this was a resolution that you introduced. If you are in agreement with the substitution, could you please motion to make the substitution?
Yes, really. Ooh, that's not working. Yes, I am in agreement with that. Also, Mr. President, really quick, I'm in agreement of removing item 11.2 off of the agenda due to the long agenda we have today. Presentation on graduation requirements.
I believe this was brought forward as a recommendation from the policy committee. So it would have to be a request from the chair of the policy committee. Madam Chair.
I'd like to wait and see if we have time for this presentation. That's possible.
Understood. I'm going to defer to our policy committee chair.
Okay, make a motion to what Charles Ruggiero said, which I forgot. We're gonna substitute.
Motion to
Substitute. There you go.
Motion to substitute item 7.7. We have a motion. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been made and seconded. All in favor? Next, we have the Beat the Streets recognition. I believe we have one of the coaches here tonight, Superintendent, Coach. So if you could help us with the calling of the names, and then the individual can come up, take a picture with the school board and your coach, and then you can return to your seat.
Sounds good.
And the school board members are welcome to come to the front, pose for the picture.
Up here, down here. I don't know, Mr. President.
Just do it right here.
Yep.
First name is Leska Hunt. Second name is Zakia Myung. Next name is Jalissa Melicro. Next is Shalom Felice. Next is Danya Nicholson.
Is there anyone else here tonight from Beat the Streets that did not get a recognition? All right, thank you so much, ladies. Let's pose a picture. Which camera do we look at? So again, that one?
This
Get in the front. Make sure you got all of us, Suzanne.
Can they see you?
Congratulations. All right, everyone look at Suzanne. 3, 2, 1.
big smiles. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Congratulations, ladies.
Great job.
Madam Clerk, can you just make a note on the record that Ms. Newman and Ms. Nina have joined us? Thank you very much. So thank you, ladies, and thank you, Coach. You're more than welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. As a matter of fact, you are encouraged. You're encouraged to stay for the rest of the meeting. However, if you have other presentations tonight, that was the end of the recognition for the ladies in the wrestling program. But thank you so much for coming tonight. You're welcome to stay. Next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting?
So move.
I have a motion from Mr. Stevens.
Second.
Second from Ms. Aiken. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We have approved the minutes. Next item, homeschool candidates. Welcome, Mr. Fatone. Are there any recommendations?
Good evening,
for-
yes. We have, I believe, reviews for students who have met the requirement of Rhode Island general law through the state and through our board policy for homeschooling, and asking for approval of those students this evening.
Do I have a motion to approve the recommendation?
So move.
I have a motion from Mr. Stevens.
Second.
Second from Mr. Nina. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's been approved. Thank you,
Thank
Mr. Fatone. Next item in the agenda, we have an open. Can we do that next, Mr. Council?
For the next item on the agenda,
7.1, we're gonna have an open session.
that matter is no longer on the agenda. That may pass.
Understood. So we are skipping item 7.1. Next, we have, I believe these are your resolutions, Mr. Stevens. Mr. Stevens, can we wrap them all in one motion, then you can discuss them in discussion and during the discussion portion of the vote?
Yeah.
All right, so it's items 7.2, 7.3, 7.4, 7.5, and 7.7. Do I have a motion to approve the items that I just enumerated?
Motion.
I have a motion from Mr. Stevens. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Mahingabo. Discussion, Mr. Stevens,
Yeah. Ooh, this is not working.
can you try Travis's? Or,
It's too far. I'm so sorry.
Mr. IT person, can we have the microphones working next time? Sorry, I don't know your name. I should be more respectful.
Hello. Can y'all hear me back there?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Y'all probably could have heard me from the beginning. Yes, listen, so I have a couple of resolutions. 7.2 is a resolution on rights to hands-on learning. Now, I'm not too, far away from graduating Providence Public Schools. And one of the main things that not only myself, but a lot of student youth organizations have advocated for was rights to more hands-on learning. I think we're doing a great job as it pertains to our CTE work and individuals within that sort of spec of things. I done said that wrong. It's okay. But rights to hands-on learning is sort of more geared towards hands-on curriculums. It's been done across the United States of America, multiple districts, which is in fact listed on this resolution. So I'm asking that the board please recommend that. And also is a portion of that where, students kind of want to come to school. They talk about, how boring some of the classes may be when they go and they sit in a class for an hour and 20 minutes. and the teacher's just teaching all day off a textbook from 1950s. So this is in fact a rights to hands-on learning curriculum. So it's more project-based. So I'm asking the board to approve that. Also, we have a resolution on equity. Now, this resolution is important to me, definitely knowing that the director of equity has been laid off. I think that is, in fact, an important resolution. It's kind of geared towards Boston, that as long as the school department exists, we have an equity office that has no less than 5 staff members within it. I think it's important when we say that we, are all about equity and we support equity and a whole bunch of different things we speak about when it comes to equity, fair hiring practices, things like that. It's important that we have equity office, but not only just an equity office, but an office that has staff members to really push that work out. So I think that is very important and crucial. Definitely knowing that the chief of equity going into next year will be the only individual within her department. I think even after the Rise Up event, which was a great event, she couldn't have done all of that by herself. So I make a recommendation to approve this and hopefully, bring in some staff members. Amplifying student voice is 7.4. I think that this also is in fact an important resolution. It amplifies students, to be more involved in the school department and, the principals, when we're hiring principals, have them be involved in, those hiring process when bringing in teachers, involving students in that, and just sort of amplifying their voice so they feel as if they are more a part of the student, a part of the school decision making. 7.5 is a resolution on a suspension policy. Now, I know we have a suspension policy, but this resolution is just, I want to recommend this so that the school board feels as if we are taking a stance on it. This is, when it comes to suspensions, and I heard that, we get to, it kind of went down over the past couple of years, but I think it's important, to, wrap some or tie some loose ends, because a lot of students of color that, are suspended, it really, data shows that it really could be, in fact, harming to marginalized students. So we want to make sure, that we take another look at this. I think it's also going to be important, wait a second. What I'm going to do is, if I can, I want to recommend this resolution back to policy. And I want to see, this is the suspension one. I want to see if the policy team could sort of, just look at this and look at the suspension policy and see where we can sort of improve it. And then hopefully we can go to it the next meeting. And then we all know that 7.4, I'm talking a lot, please bear with me. 7.7 is the multilingual learning resolution. Charles Ruggiero took a look at that. That just sort of is geared towards, I feel like I'm yelling, is geared towards, rights for students to have multilingual learning services. So I think that that's an important, resolution to pass. I'm going to recommend that, we table 7.5. I should have thought of it more. Send that to the policy committee, and I'm recommending that 7.2, 7.3, 7.4, and 7.7 approved. Sorry for, all of my talking. I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. And I want to apologize. I've inadvertently skipped public comments. But we'll circle. That was my fault. We'll circle back to that.
I'm sorry.
Well, we have a motion to approve the previously appointed items 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, 7.4, 7. We're tabling not 7.5.
Nope.
It's 7.7.
Yeah.
So yeah, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Mr. Nina.
So just to be clear, it's a motion to approve 7.2, 7.3, 7.4, and 7.7.
Sorry, Mr. Rivera.
Right.
Correct. 7.1 we skipped over. So 7.2, 7.3, 7.7. We have a motion. We have a second. We have any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I just want to be marked as abstaining on 7.3, Madam Clerk, simply because of the 5-person staffing requirement. I have questions about this, but we can talk about that. All right, returning back to comment, we're going to go to public comment. We'll start off with the folks that signed up online first, and then if there's anybody in the room who didn't have an opportunity to sign up, we will also invite you forward to speak your piece. So first on the speaking order, we have representatives from Beat the Streets. Is there anybody from Beat the Streets that would like to talk to us tonight? That's okay. Next, Come forward, please. Welcome, congratulations again, and if you could please state your name for the record. Make sure your mic is on.
Hi, my name is Kim Young. I'm in 6th grade at West Providence Middle School. I joined Beat the Street community when my older brother started wrestling when I was in 1st grade. At that time, I only really knew 3 wrestlers in our state who were girls. Now I wrestle with girls from all over Rhode Island. This year, I wrestled at Rhode Island State and won 1st in girls and 4th in boys. As girls, sometimes we have to work harder to prove ourselves, and wrestling gives us the confidence we need to succeed both on and off the mat. Beat the Streets has taught me what true determination, dedication, and strength are. Most people will not be able to make it through one practice, yet many of us go to practice once or even twice a day. Wrestling is a unique sport. We wrestle not only for our teams, but for ourselves. It's the only sport I know where we can wrestle each other all day and we can still show up mat side to support each other on. We usually don't get the same recognition as other sports, but we work just as hard or harder to get the job done. I have a lot of great memories with Beat the Streets. All of these coaches are my coaches. If I have a problem in school, wrestling, or just life, I know I can go to any one of them for help. The boys who first started teaching me when I was younger are in high school and college now, and they still find time to cheer us on and help us learn. I still go to their matches and tournaments and cheer them on as well. Beat the Streets helps us keep our minds and bodies strong. They keep us in school and doing our work. They teach us how to succeed both on the mat and in life. If Beat the Streets was only one word, it would be family.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Margaret Meehan.
That was for her.
That was her. Thank you so much, Margaret. Lindsay Piper. Welcome. You have 3 minutes and you can begin when you're ready.
Okay, thanks everybody. Is this on? I think it's on. My name's Lindsay Paiva, use she, her pronouns, and I teach 3rd grade ESL at Webster Elementary. I wanted to thank you again to the board and all the community members who come out every month to advocate for students and so we can build the schools that our students deserve. And I'm grateful to the board for continuing to show up for our kids. I'm here to speak today in support of the Our Schools PD's Coalition's Ethnic Studies campaign. And as a 3rd grade teacher, I've seen firsthand the impact of ethnic studies, the positive impact it's had on my own students through the lessons and units that I've designed throughout the years. And I think it's important that we have a district-wide effort to support that work because right now it sort of falls on individual teachers so that all students can have this experience. Unfortunately, right now at the elementary level in Providence, and since I've been in the district for the past 7 years, there is no time allotted, like 0 instructional minutes to social studies or ethnic studies at the elementary level, K to 5 in our schedule. So the curricular restrictions and the limitations that are imposed by the RIDE instructional minutes around like ELA and math make it difficult for that to happen. But it's also been exacerbated because there's been a lot of pressure to teach to the test and do only RIDE test prep, and we're not always able to engage the kids in the ways that we would like to. So we really need time first, which is hard to come by, and resources, but also training for teachers so that we can make sure that students have what they need to understand and connect with their own identities, but also the identities of their classmates and to understand the histories of others in our community. Schools should really be providing students with the skills that they need to be global citizens so they can think critically and help build the world in which they want to live. And despite the curricular restrictions, I have always worked to integrate ethnic studies anyway, and the benefits are so clear. So right now, my kids are working on like identity text projects to display at the MLL gallery walk with Rydell in a couple of weeks, and this project really helps them to like feel uplifted and seen. And just doing like a simple collage, it's like the joy that they feel and the excitement that they feel is so palpable and different than other lessons that we're maybe required to do. And I also try to bring in like Rhode Island Latino Arts and the Rhode Island Latino Book Award, and just to watch their faces light up when they like hear a character name that is their DS name, or they like see an experience in the book that they can connect to. It's super important, and it really affirms their lived experiences. But fitting all of this into a jam-packed schedule is really a huge challenge, and so I think it can't depend on teachers. And the district really needs to reorganize its priorities to make space for ethnic studies and history at all levels. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next we have Mr. Norris. Welcome, Mr. Norris.
Hello, everybody. Can everybody hear me? All right. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am the son of immigrant parents from Liberia, George and Julia Norris. I'm also the product of the Providence school system, where Flora Bezel and Rick Taylor from Gilbert Stewart Middle School took me under their wing and made sure I was taken care of. And I had some incredible teachers at Feinstein High School, John Healy, Lenora Goodwin, Mike Johnson, who took extreme care of me and turned me into the product that I am. I've spent my entire career in Providence so far, and dedicated my entire career so far in Providence, first as a college crusade advisor, now on What We Learn. I was also a counselor at Gilbert, at Alvarez High School. Forgive my son, but he's gonna come everywhere with me. I also spent as a school counselor at Alvarez, became an assistant principal at 360 High School. And the entirety of my time has been in Providence. So this community means so much to me that anybody can ever fathom. I don't think you understand just how beautiful Providence is as a community to me. There's sort of a beauty it's almost poetic when I walk around, when I bike around, when I ride my scooter around school and middle school kids are say, yo, mister. You know, I had a young boy from Roger Williams before Malcolm was born. Yo, mister, when's your work day over? Had no idea how he even found that out, but he knew what's up. You know, usually early in the mornings when I'm going around for my 5 a.m. run and you see the families trying to make it to lunch, trying to make sure they get their lunches, and, you know, they're hoping that we as a district care about their students. They're hoping that we take care of their dreams that most of them left their home country for, to come here to be a part of the American dream for their kids. And these are all of the things that I reflect on a daily basis as I walk through Providence. And if you follow me anywhere on social media, you will know that I am one of the biggest celebrators of Providence. So today I'm not here to bash anybody, because I think we've done enough of that in the public and the media. And I think that's caused more harms to students and families than we can ever imagine. Today, I'm also not here to pit school leaders against school leaders, because that's also a harmful practice. I'm definitely not here to pit teachers against teachers. That's also a harmful practice. What I am here today, though, is to publicly, first of all, is to have the courage to stand up to all of us in this room and in this entire community to say that we owe our community a collective apology for how we've carried ourselves, because it hasn't been the most fun to sit back and watch. Today I'm here, one of the things to do, I want to teach my son that when something doesn't sit right with him, he should have the courage, no matter what the circumstances, what the place is, to be able to speak his truth. And this is one of the reasons I'm here today. As of June 30th, I will no longer be an employee of the Providence Public School if, you know, as far as I know for now. I'm the father of a young boy and I have a young daughter on the way. I decided to educate I hope to educate my students in Providence, but after the last couple of months of what's been going on, I have had a very hard time with that decision. For months, I haven't been able to sleep well. Again, like I said, I'm not here today to bash anyone because much harm has already been done. In the end, when we do this, children and families get hurt. Today, my first goal is to thank God for the gift of teaching and reaching children because I feel like this is where my gift has been. The second thing I want to do is thank my wife because my wife has had to put up with so many days where I'm missing from the house because I have to be somewhere with the kids. You can find me at 5 a.m. at 360 High School working out with a young Dominican boy who couldn't speak English last year or knew how to do a layup. But man, he made it to he made sure we got us to the playoffs this year. You know, and of Providence, we lost to them again by 6 points. But that young boy is telling me now he want to be a Major League Baseball player. He's willing to do whatever he can. I tell him 5 a.m. When I say 6 a.m., he's there 5:50. Sometimes I drive around the building just to test to see if he really wants it. That's the kind of guy you have had in me, and that's the kind of guy you're always going to get from me, no matter if Providence decides to continue with me. I'm also here. I would be extremely remiss if I didn't thank my teachers publicly because I feel like our teachers have been vilified through this process. Our teachers have been made to be incompetent, to seem incompetent. But I know day in and day out when I walk into these classrooms, these teachers are going beyond and above and doing everything to make sure that students have a future. It was because of teachers like them and I want to point to my teachers to say thank you, thank you, thank you. I want to thank my school principal because she's afforded me an opportunity to grow. She has created one of the safest school communities here in Providence. Every indicator of school safety can be checked off when you walk into 360 High School. We all know that the science says that the prerequisite for students to actually get to the point of learning, they need to feel safe. They need to be in an environment where people know them. There are about 338 kids in my school, and there's only 15 kids I don't know by name and face. And you know what I do? I print the roster and I call them to my office to know them. So thank you, Kerry, for creating such a school environment. And if I go over time, I apologize because I know you all have business to do. And again, our staff, I cannot thank you enough for helping me grow as an administrator. Giving me, these people at 360 are not afraid to give you upward feedback. They will tell you when your suggestion is terrible. They will tell you when a meeting could have been an email, but they will be frank and open with you. And I trust them with my life. I trust my children with my teachers. I would send my child to 360 High School any day without hesitation. That's the kind of community that was created for me at Feinstein. So when I was looking for a job, I wasn't just looking for any job. I was looking for a place where I could send my own child. That has come into question lately, but I can promise you that I would trust any of those teachers at 360 with my child, with my children, I should say. We got a girl coming. The other thing that I really want to say tonight is that I want to acknowledge my community leaders because I know that as a school leader, if you have any sense within your head, you would know that it's important to collaborate with the community. So I want to publicly call these people. I want to thank Kobe Dennis, Diana Garlington, Bilal McLeod, Kyle Dennis, Juan Carter, Wale Akimbi, Ed German, Ellen Baskerville Dukes, Calvin Jones, Frank Nkoma, Kyle Bennett, Dwayne Boo Hackney, April Moran Duran, Montero Duran, Chip Douglas, Sarah Lou, Cedric Huntley, Christina Moyer, Walton Kirk, Brother Ray Smith, Dan Lenore, my grandmother, who lit the fire service in me. I also want to thank the Gentlemen's Academy, particularly Martin Kirk. Martin Kirk is another assistant principal in the district that has received a non-renewal. But for almost 10 years now, Martin has helped me create an organization that has sent hundreds of young men to college, and Martin is actually going to be attending a college graduation this May from a young boy who he drove to college quite a few years ago who didn't have a ride to college because Martin was his only ride. I also want to thank the young ladies at my school. We just started a young ladies group called Rising Queens. I want to thank Dolores, their mentor, for making this happen because we looked at the data that says African-American girls were getting pushed out of schools equally as boys. And so 360 mission was to create a space, looking at the various subgroups, our mission was to create a space that we can recognize that these young women needed a space that worked for African-American young women. We looked at all of the data, and I'm happy that we now have a group like that. Lastly, I would like to make some recommendations for the board and for the entire leadership of Providence Public School, and here they go. You have to work collaboratively with us. You cannot continue to do things to us. We expect you to do it with us. We expect you that you consider our input. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation. Every school has a different context. So when you apply the one-size-fits-all to every school, you can actually harm children. So we do expect that we will do everything. I am promising you that in all of the power that I have of the capability, and now until June 30th, I will work with you in any way to make sure that children receive the best service that they can. We talk about leadership and we talk about talent retention. Part of our turnaround action plan is retaining world-class talent. Well, the way you lose world-class talent is to have a lack of respect for people. Even when you have to deliver bad news like non-news, I would not want to be in the superintendent's shoes because it is a very difficult time for you, and I know that. And I know that it causes you to lose sleep. I know that it causes a lot of other pressures on your shoulders that nobody here can understand. But when you have people that represent you come to deliver news, we expect a level of respect. When you're not renewing people or when you are terminating people, there's a way to have empathy that does not cause further damage. I don't mind the truth, but I need sometimes the truth to be delivered with a sense of empathy. And that's what I felt my teachers did not get. And I will stand on the record to publicly say that we need to rectify that as a district because people are human beings first before they are teachers. Their identity isn't just tied to teaching. They are human beings. They need to be recognized. I urge the politicians to be an active part of this. This is not just on the school board or the school board members or the superintendent. I urge the politicians to be an active part of this. Come into schools, actively work with teachers, get into a class, take a small group, collaborate with teachers, invite kids to your offices, let them know what you do because kids need to see people that look like them doing important things in society. So I urge the politicians as well. I urge the mayor to be an active part of this. We're going to a budget situation. I hope that we can allocate more funds to the schools so that the personnel that we need, again, we cannot retain talent when we cannot pay talent. Talent will find its way somewhere else. And guess what? The other district right now, the saddest part for this for me is watching my teachers getting picked apart heading to other districts. Not because they want to, but because they have to take care of their families and they enjoy teaching. This has been the hardest part for me watching this happen. Also, I call on every politician. I call on every community member. I also want to call on the universities. We need to do a really good job of training a high quality teaching corps. Everybody's complicit in this when children fail. Everybody, nobody in the state of Rhode Island. And if we don't do what we need to do as a collective, it will have devastating economic impact on the state. And if we're not already feeling it, we will feel it in the next 5, 10, 15, and 20 years. It will happen. Because years ago, when we could have made the effort to train more teachers to work with English language learners, we failed to do that. And guess what's happening now? So I'm calling on all of us. This is not a one person take the blame situation. This is all of us to collectively do our job. And I'm also calling on parents. Parents, you cannot expect the schools to be the only educator of your child. If you have the capabilities to educate and be a part of this, I would love a recommendation that says a high school kid don't receive a diploma until parents attend mandatory school, PTOs, all of those things. I can't make that, but I think that's a pretty good idea to float around because if you have the capability, and I say you have it because not all parents do, but if you have the capabilities, parents, I'm calling on you. I'm pleading with you. I will ride around the neighborhood. As a matter of fact, I do. I ride on Saturday morning and I yell at my students, come to Saturday school. I meet parents in grocery store and I have these meetings. And the little bit of Spanish that I know, I speak it. It don't matter what I gotta do. Hey, hola, ¿cómo está? I say, and when we do what we gotta do, whatever I got to do, if you don't know me because you don't face with me a lot, you will understand that Rich Norris does not play about his kids. He is willing to do any and everything. So parents, I implore you to please be a part of this process. And just very lastly, I can't hold anybody accountable without holding myself accountable because that would be a cowardly move. I hold myself accountable for any lack of success my students do not achieve. I will continue to work on behalf of Providence whether or not I'm still in the district. You're not going to get rid of me because Providence is my home and I'm going to be here. You might find me at Buckland basketball court tomorrow. You might find me on the North End. You might find me on Marina Park. You might find me at Sackett Street. You might find me at Davy Lopes. You will find me at Zucco. I don't like them because they beat me in the city championship twice at John Hope. I still got a beat from years ago. But I want to say that any level of success that my kids don't have, I'm responsible and I will exhaust every avenue. My student lives matters. My teacher lives matter. My community life, lives matter. My two children, their life matter too. And I want them in a school district that prioritize their ultimate health and not just lip service and saying we are for the kids. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you all.
Next on public comment, we have Alejandra Lindstrom Peralta. Welcome, you have 3 minutes, you can begin when you're ready.
Good evening, thank you. I'm here tonight to speak about two of the best people I've ever worked with. Carrie Tuttleby, principal of 360 High School, and Rich Norris, AP of 360. Both of them, which will be out of a job at the end of the school year. I can truthfully say that Carrie is the best boss I have ever had and the most genuinely caring principal I've known. Carrie's dedication to the lives of our students is obvious through rigorous hiring practices that have built up an amazing staff, on her insistence on an environment of mutual respect, care, safety, rigor, and support to all students, especially those unheard and rejected elsewhere. Over my past 6 years at 360, I experienced a pandemic, 2 pregnancies, and postpartum depression. I don't know that I would still be teaching if I had been working somewhere without Carrie. She treats students and staff like humans and provides love and support through anything. And that's what makes her, part of what makes her an amazing principal. The dream team was made complete when Rich Norris joined 360 as assistant principal. Rich's commitment to students is all-consuming, and honestly, I've always had 2 fears regarding Rich. The first fear was that he is so committed that I feared he would burn out someday, or that his wife would leave him. Fear number 2 regarding Rich was that he was so effective at his job and so committed that he would be pulled out of 360 to become a principal at a school in trouble. But yeah, so that hasn't happened. Instead, he's out of a job. More often than not, I am disappointed by people's follow through. They can talk the talk, but once they've secured what they want, they don't fulfill their promises. And this cannot be further from the truth when talking about Carrie and Rich. They are the real deal, and I can only hope that PPSE will someday recognize and reward this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Carrie Lynn Jones. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Carrie Lynn Bichione. I'm a teacher at Asa Messer Elementary. I'm also a member of the Youth Teacher Alliance and have been fortunate enough to support the amazing students in their pursuit of the Ethnic Studies program. Additionally, I'm an education specialist and a doctoral student in curriculum, instruction, and assessment. Decades of research have demonstrated the positive impacts of participatory design, initiatives in which students play a role in the content and structure of curriculum in their own schools. Effectively incorporating student voice in educational decisions should not be limited to allowing students to speak and then not following through with the response. Educational reform cannot happen without examining and challenging the current structures and practices already in place. As an educator, I've experienced educational reform brought about by policy and decision makers disconnected from the classroom. Demands processes, and expectations of the classroom may change, but outcomes rarely do. Explicit contributions by students in designing their learning environments have two significant and substantial impacts on teaching and learning. One, it offers teachers important insights into learning and teaching from the perspective of students as expert witnesses, challenging the passive role of students within schools and redefining student-teacher relationships as a joint endeavor. This work enables students to actively shape their education as citizens. As an educational researcher, I've analyzed an abundance of research in curriculum reform with the following common student outcomes identified in countless studies. Stronger commitment to learning, newly developed sense of identity as learners, improved motivation, greater attendance, positive attitudes towards learning, greater responsibility in learning, and more positive perceptions of and relationships with teachers. As stakeholders in education, we all have the same goal: improve learning environments, increase engagement, create partnerships within and among our communities, and provide opportunities for authentic, active learning in high-quality, equitable schools. We want to effect change that is sustainable, lasting, and meaningful for our students. None of this can happen in isolation. None of this can be done without the support of all stakeholders, especially students, families, and communities. The students here have done the difficult work. They have researched, designed, engaged others in, and advocated for their educational needs in a responsible and effective manner. The dedication and passion they have shown by way of bringing this proposal to the school board should inspire all of us to not only let them lead in their educational pursuits, but follow their lead as they create a pathway for their own success that the rest of us has failed to do. I hope we are listening to the youth voices, and more importantly, I hope we empower them to connect their lives, their learning, and their futures in this quest for relevant, sustainable, and essential curricular design. Thank you.
Next we have Sheila.
It's pronounced Sheila.
Sheila?
Yeah.
Sheila Yang? Welcome. You have 3 minutes. You can begin when you're ready.
This has been on. Good afternoon, school board. My name is Sheila Yang. I am an 11th grader at Pilgrim High School, and I'm here on behalf of Arise and Our Schools PPD. Our Schools PPD is a coalition made up of 6 different youth organizations whose main goal is to ensure that students in PPSD are getting the quality education they deserve. Currently, we're working on implementing ethnic studies as a mandated course into the PPSD curriculum. Ethnic studies is the study of histories, cultures, and racial issues in the United States. It should be considered that ethnic studies is not the same as multicultural studies, as multicultural studies is introducing other cultural backgrounds and beliefs, which is more surface level compared to ethnic studies. Currently, students either don't have access to ethnic studies course, or it's an optional elective that many students can't take. Our surveys have shown that 89% of students want ethnic studies as a mandated course, including myself. As stated before, I go to Pilgrim High School, which is in the Warwick district. So why does this issue matter so much to me if this is a PPSD issue? In my eyes, it's not just a PPSD issue, but rather an issue with the education system. In my high school years, I've taken every required course I needed to graduate and get into college. World history, US history, Western civilization. Yet every single course never discussed the true extent behind the history of people of color, despite how impactful this history is. In those same 11 years, I often find myself to be one of the few people of color in my classes, as well as one of the few Hmong students in my school. While it's true that the Warwick district is white-centric, that doesn't mean history is white-centric. Many of my peers aren't even aware who Hmong people are. I strongly believe that bringing ethnic studies into school will not only give further insight into history, but to help many students to feel represented in their academics. Our demands are to create a student-led ethnic studies leadership council
that will oversee the implementation of ethnic studies as a requirement for graduation, as well as to hire more teachers of color and teachers of color with ethnic studies backgrounds. We also ask for project-based assessments as opposed to exams to enhance the true nature of learning ethnic studies. We are asking the school board to please help us in this fight to implement ethnic studies as a mandated course into PPSD. And if not for us, then for the future generations who will benefit from this course. Thank you for your
Thank you
time.
so much, Sheila. Next we have Edgar Martinez. Edgar Martinez. Welcome, Edgar. You have 3 minutes. You can begin when you're ready.
Can you hear me all right? Hello, my name is Edgar Martinez. I'm a 11th grader at Keenan Schools, which isn't in the state currently, but I've been going to Providence schools for pretty much all my life, and I'll be returning next year. I'm an OSPD in Young Voices. Ethnic studies to be implemented is like really important to me because I am a Hispanic youth who really didn't learn any of my history through parents or schools or really anything. I had to do a lot of digging on my own. And that shouldn't be. School is an education tool. It should be there to teach on youth, children. And so it's just really important to just put it out there to have ethnic studies for young people who are like me, who learn nothing about anything related to their background. And I think it's also just important because we have just a white-centric view on history in our education systems currently. And that is such a disturbance to our brown and black youth who need to learn their own history, such as we learn about slavery in our history classes, but African history starts so much more back than there. It doesn't start slavery. There's so much history more behind that, and how they even got to America, and we should teach that in our classes instead of just white people and white people's versions of it. That's all I had to say for today. We want black and ethnic studies want it to be student-led and have black people teaching black and pop ethnic studies background to be led. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Juliana Bridget Espinal. Welcome, Juliana. You have 3 minutes, and you can begin when you're ready.
Are you guys able to hear me? Okay. My name is Juliana. I am a 10th grader at Classical High School. I'm here today on behalf of Providence Student Movement, Providence Student Union, and our school's PVD. Before I begin, I would just like to say to Mr. Norris and anyone else here that is representing 360, we stand with you and your struggle. I'm going to begin the rest of what I'm talking about today. Our school's PVD is a coalition of various youth and young adult-led organizations throughout Rhode Island. Every week, this coalition comes together to discuss our long-time campaign goal, the full implementation of ethnic studies into all PPSD high schools. Within our demand for an ethnic studies curriculum, we ask that potential teachers be adequately trained, supported, and compensated in their roles as ethnic studies teachers. On top of this, we demand that across PPSD, more and more teachers of color are accepted every year. According to your website, 93.5% of PPSD students are students of color, whereas according to a RIDE report from 2018, the vast majority of PPSD teachers, 77%, are white. A diverse curriculum cannot be implemented without a diverse faculty. Dominicans make up an overwhelming amount of Providence's immigrant population. It is to such an extent that every August, a Dominican festival is thrown in Lower South Providence, notorious for being the epicenter of Dominican culture in Rhode Island. I was born and raised here, and I currently reside here. In January, a show entitled La Broa opened at Trinity Rep. It follows a young college student from Texas as she learns about a woman named Doña Rosa and her family's history on Broad Street, affectionately known by locals as number one. To avoid spoiling the show, in case it goes on Broadway, I'll give no further details. But having my family's history be validated on such a large platform with such acclaim was one of the most moving moments of my life. I knew my history and I knew my truth, but for the first time in my life, other people were learning about it and praising it. As powerful as this moment was, it highlighted a severe issue with Providence curriculum, its failure to include local and diverse histories. I implore the school board to consider my testimony and that of my peers, and to aid us in our fight to implement ethnic studies into PPSC schools. I thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Next we have Aubrey Johnson. Welcome, Aubrey. You have 3 minutes and you can begin when you're ready.
Good evening. Thank you for listening to me. Many of you know me or have seen me, and as you know, I wear many hats. I'm going to try to focus on the wrestler mom hat tonight. Although in the last 24 hours, I've read the resolutions and I've learned a lot of things. I'm feeling some kind of way, but I'm going to focus. I will say, before I do that, I applaud Richard Norris. I think he's amazing. I see what he does in the community. I know what he does to the schools, and I've actually said to him before, he's the type of vice principal, principal leader that should be in every school. And I think that's something y'all need to see and recognize and keep in mind. I'm going to bring it back to wrestling. My daughter is a wrestler for Beat the Streets. She was acknowledged tonight. And the reason that they were acknowledged are because they are the first, and I'm going to start with a quote from Condoleezza Rice. It says, I think the truth of the matter is people who end up as first don't actually set out to be first. They set out to do something they love, and it just so happens that they are the first to do it. And I think that speaks to the female wrestlers that we have and have had. They were the first, this year was the first year Rhode Island had state championships for girls. It was the first year New England had state championships for girls, which is a beautiful thing. My daughter was first in the state for her weight class, definitely the 2 my own horn or her horn, and she placed 6th in New England. This is something that was acknowledged at the State House, and I appreciate y'all and thank y'all for acknowledging that here tonight. I want to say, and I just found out that Jennifer Wood is a co-founder of Beat the Streets, who is a female, so it just comes full circle. When my daughter first said she wanted to do wrestling, I was surprised, but I wasn't too worried because I'd seen Beat the Streets in action at school and I'd seen other female wrestlers doing it. And I know the coaches are amazing. Silas is amazing. The whole program is amazing. And she went in, and this was her first year, and she just was a beast, right? Her first match, she pinned, right? And I've been her biggest cheerleader. I've watched her grow. I've watched her self-confidence grow. I've watched her take initiative and get up when it was dark out to go run, to meet weight when there was no adult telling her to do so. And that's a beautiful thing, and it's a beautiful feeling as a parent. It's a beautiful thing to see. I've seen her wrestle boys who were, their expectation was low, right? She's a girl, and when the match was over, their expectations changed, right? And that's not just for my daughter, that's for all these girls that are wrestling. I salute all of them. I commend all of them. It's a beautiful thing. I ask that y'all support Beat the Streets in the future, not just for the girls, for the boys as well. It's a wonderful, wonderful program. I know we have to talk a lot. I'm going to leave with a quote, because I started with one, and this is from Nancy Pelosi. It says, our country was built by strong women, and we will continue to break down walls and defy stereotypes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next we have Alan Foley. Welcome, Ellen. You have 3 minutes, and you can begin when you're ready.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Good evening. My name is Ellen Foley, and I'm a teacher at 360 High School. I support the ethnic studies proposal and have strong interest in the draft school closure policy. But I'm here today to describe the amazing leadership skills of my principal and assistant principal that our school system is at risk of losing to other districts. I was a founding teacher at 360 and have worked closely with Principal Carrie Tuttleby from the start for the last 9 years. And from the start, Carrie designed 360 as a collaborative effort. She engaged teachers, students, and community members in the work from the very beginning before the school even opened. That ethos has continued throughout her tenure, and the school is infused with her humanity, her vision, and her sense of hope and possibility. One thing that Carrie does better than anyone else is identify and retain amazing staff members, and it's no coincidence that 360 has only issued a few grievances over the last 9 years and never against administration. You heard from our assistant principal tonight, Rich Norris, and I can tell you without a doubt that while all the staff and students and families contribute to the amazing culture at 360, besides Carrie, no one has had a greater impact on that climate and culture than Rich. He is relentless, as you heard, in both his warmth and his high expectations for our students and for our staff. When he visits my classroom, his first question is, how are the kids going to use this in their real life? Just today, this is a real story, I heard him ask a group of students gathered in the hallway, what would have more impact, diplomacy or military action? Just in the hallway. He's also known for his dad jokes. Both of our administrators talk to kids about their real lives and hold them accountable for the kind of qualities that we hope to inspire in every student. Integrity, communication, empathy, achievement. They themselves are people of great integrity. When they say they will do something, it happens. And that's despite the fact that they have 1 million things to do every day. I have been so lucky to work side by side with them and learn from them. They lead with passion, humility, and humanity. If the lack of process governing the closing of 360 sends them outside of this district, it will be a huge loss for the Providence Public Schools. Carrie Tuttleby and Rich Norris are the type of leaders we should be supporting and lifting up every day. The superintendent framed this as a budget issue, but we really can't afford to lose these amazing people. Thank you.
Next, we have Kaylee Rockwell. Kaylee? Welcome. You have 3 minutes. You can begin when you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon to the school board. I just want to first thank you all for your continued support of 360 and our community, our school, and our students most of all. We really appreciate it. I'm here also to speak on behalf of, I think most of our staff, all of our staff, in thanking our principal, Carrie, and our assistant principal, Rich. This is my 5th year teaching. I have spent 2 years at 360 High School. I spent 3 years before that teaching at a large regional high school in South Carolina. Learning and teaching under Carrie and Rich has been the best professional development of my career. They have taught me, I've always had the value that teaching is community work. They have taught me what that looks like in action. The very next day after I was hired, I received 12 emails from staff congratulating me on getting the position. I remember sitting at my desk at my current school and just crying, thinking about how welcoming that my new community was. Carrie has taught me what it means to work in a community. She's also pushed me to be the best teacher that I can be. One example of this is learning how to run a field trip. I had never been on a field trip with students before I got to 360 High School. And just on Monday, I brought a group of 20 students to the State House by myself, where they got to meet the governor and interact with a mock legislative session. And it's just incredible to see students engage in the community. That is the value that Carrie has created at 360 High School, that students are leaders now, that their voices matter, and that as teachers, it is our job to facilitate that. Rich has taught me how to be a leader in my classroom. Alan was talking about how he had just heard that conversation in the hallway today. Rich was just telling me this morning about how he was asking students at lunch about the death penalty, because that is what my co-teacher and I are talking about in our civics class right now. He's constantly in my classroom pushing students to do their best work, even when I feel like I cannot. He's pushing me to be the best that I can be. More than anything though, Carrie and Rich have inspired me to continue to teach. I was burnt out when I left my last school. I wasn't sure how long I would be in the classroom. I feel so rejuvenated teaching under them. I feel like they created the conditions that would allow me to make teaching my career. And I'm staying in Providence because of them. And I hope that you would retain them, because that is the kind of impact that they have on our community. Thank you.
Next we have Heather Egmuller. Heather. Next we have Tahan Ross. Welcome, Mr. Ross. You have 3 minutes. You can begin when you're ready.
All right. Good evening, everybody. I'm here to speak about the resolve, grit, and strength of character of Assistant Principal Rich Morris. No matter what the negative headlines are about our school system, he exudes positive energy, optimism, and he's steadfast, remains steadfast to getting better at getting better. He loves the students of Providence Public Schools. He loves the staff. This is his home. As an educator, he did not fly here. He grew here. He was educated locally at Feinstein High School. He also went to University of Rhode Island. He has over a decade of experience as an educator here. And he was also involved in establishing the Black Caucus for educators in Rhode Island. As he mentioned earlier, he works from sunup to sundown, okay? I was a principal in the school district. I had 2 assistant principals who made it known to me in no uncertain terms that the day ends 15 minutes after dismissal for them. I got on the phone and called Jim Barrow and said, this ain't gonna work for me. And she says, we're in turnaround, they need to work 8 hours, at least a minimum of 8 hours, right? So that speaks to what the commitment that he has in this district. He's served as a mentor to numerous assistant principals, leaders, teachers, school staff. He even mentored me. When I first came to this district, the first day we had a principal's meeting at Broad Street Elementary School. I walked in there, I was so excited to see you, Javier and Jose. I had come from a district where I was the only Black person. If you look up the index for staff, it will say 100% Caucasian. During lunch, I immediately came over to you because I said, wow, there's someone who looks like me. And I said, I felt psychologically safe chopping it up with you. The first thing I talked to you about, I'm not sure if you remember, I remember you had on some khakis, a blue shirt, there was some swag from your school, you were leaning over eating lunch, and I said to you, I said, hey, are there any targeted interventions for young Black and brown boys? And you said, not that you know of at the elementary level. What I want to say is, shortly after that, I crossed paths with Rich, and he told me about his Gentlemen's Academy. This Gentlemen's Academy has been around for a number of years, and he's empowered young men of color by offering mentorship and so many positive experiences that sets them up for success. Leadership skills, academic growth, those are all of the things that these kids have gotten because he poured love into them. If you walk through this city, okay, and there's a lot of teachers that don't live in Providence. There's a lot of school leaders that don't live in Providence. He lives here. If you walk through this city with him, you cannot get 2 or 3 feet down the sidewalk without someone walking up to him and saying, Mr. Norris, Mr. Soares, I'm a fireman now. 10 more steps. Mr. Norris, I just finished boot camp. I'm in the Marines. And he gives them a high five, he daps them up. So that is so powerful to me. And that goes back to what I say. As an educational leader, he did not fly here, he grew here. I also want to just speak to his commitment to staying in this district. So many people have left. Since under the state takeover, I've seen, I would say, over 60 school leaders of color leave. School leaders, directors, assistant superintendents, and chiefs. There's been so many. I even decided to wave the white flag after a while. I got a call. They said, don't go there. Come here. We got you. And I jumped ship. Rich wants to stay here. I'm at the mercy of you all. He's at the mercy of you all to make the right decision and try to make things work so that he can stay here, so that he can continue to have an amazing, phenomenal impact on thousands of more students. I'm not sure if I'm out of time.
Miss you.
But that's how I want to end it. He's not trying to wave the white flag. He wants to stay here. Thank you so much.
Next, we have school board member comments. Do we have any comments from school board members?
Mr. President?
Mr. Stevens?
Really quick, I just want to ask the attorney. So we moved 7.1. Where will that item be listed, or will we be going over that item tonight?
We didn't move 7.1. 7.1 is a past item. There's no matter scheduled for 7.1 any longer.
So when it says pass, what does that mean? Can you explain it for us?
Sure. So that item is not taken up for action because there's no one who's requested that the matter be heard in open session anymore.
Okay, got it. And then secondly, really quick, and it's just a comment. I just want to tell my board colleagues, because it's a long meeting, you may see me step out a couple of times. I know we have a long executive session as well, because we have numerous of non-renewals. So 2 presentations just, is just a bit too much tonight. One presentation is almost 30 slides. The next one is almost 20. By the time we get through both presentations, none of us are going to want to stay here for executive session. And historically, board members would just be like, listen, let's just go with the superintendent's recommendation. So as we get down to, 11.0, I just urge that we probably stick to 1 presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Any other further school board member comment? Ms. Newman?
Hello? Check. All right, cool. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for showing up tonight, as you all always do. And it's really amazing to see so many familiar faces, especially those from 360 who have continued to come out. Just Ellen Foley, I see you back there just being relentless, and just everybody who continues to fight for your community. You know what I mean? It's not even just a school, it's a community. It's a family. And it's so evident. And I just really applaud you all. Just wanted to just say I love you all. I'm standing with 360, till forever. You know what I mean? 360 is forever to me, because what you all represent is what I wish every single school could look like. And so I just love you all so much. Just big shout out to Beat the Streets, to all the young women and Beat the Streets. It is just, I love you guys so much. Beat the Streets is just such a phenomenal program. And I got to see them in action at UCAP when I worked there a couple of years ago. And it is just so amazing how y'all have grown and just congratulations to the young women, and just wanted to state like ethnic studies in every school. Like the Our Schools campaign is just phenomenal. It's so inspiring to me. And hearing our students come out and talk about why it's important. Not important, it's critical, it's necessary, it's crucial to have ethnic studies be at the core of what we're doing. And PPSD, I'm just so inspired by you all. And the last thing I want to say, I'm standing with Rich Norris and Carrie Tuttleby, two amazing educators who Providence should be modeling their leadership after you too, right? Like, this is not just about what you do in school, it's about what you do out of school, it's about what you're doing with families, it's about what you're doing in classrooms, behind closed doors, in public. Just the integrity that you all bring to this profession and the leadership that you develop, that's what makes an organizer. This isn't even just about being an educator, this is about being community organizers. I see you all as champions, as leaders, as organizers. And if y'all started a school to train educators, like, sign me up. You know, like, everyone should be going to be schooled by Carrie Tuttleby and Rich Norris. I'm still just transparently learning what my place is as a new board member. I'm a bit confused about what our role is in terms of non-renewals. But if I have any voting power or any power at all to like oppose what is happening specifically to these two folks, like, I will do that. And that is my word. I don't know what my role is, and I'm going to learn about that more in executive session, I'm sure. But I'm standing with Rich, I'm standing with Carrie 360, and everyone in this room. So thank you all for coming out.
She hadn't originally signed up for public comment, but she came in late and asked if she could speak, and I forgot I had made that commitment, so I wanted to honor that. Please go ahead.
Testing.
3 minutes to begin when you're ready.
Good evening. My name is Nancy Zahn, and I am the program manager of the Alliance of Rhode Island Southeast Asians for Education. I'm also a product of the Providence Public School District. I'm here to speak in support of the resolution in regards to ethnic studies. As a child of Hmong genocide survivors, I experienced the inequities of the education system. I didn't have the resources and support that I needed to thrive and to make the changes I want to see. I was not equipped to navigate the various systems in America and be civically engaged. Not once was my history taught or mentioned, despite our sacrifices during the Vietnam War and the Civil War in Laos. It wasn't until I joined Arise when I first learned about my own history and identity and how that shows up in different systems in America. Having the privilege and opportunity to be in Arise has empowered me to fight towards making sure all learners receive an adequate education, make sure that they are included in the process of making decisions because they know what is best for them, and that our administrators are reflective of the student body. Furthermore, in regards to representation, there are only a few Black administrators that are still here in the district. Many of them have been pushed out of the district, whether it was intentional or not. This is extremely problematic, especially for a Black identifying educator and administrator named Richard Norris. Mr. Norris has been one of the few administrators that consistently shows up with and for the community. Every day, he is intentionally spending his time connecting with families and students. Sometimes this looks like showing up at recreation centers, playing basketball with community members, and strolling in Providence neighborhoods to develop trusting relationships with students and their families. Understand that there is a budget cut within the district. However, Mr. Norris is an administrator that the district cannot afford to lose. With over 90% of students in PPSD identifying as BIPOC, it is important that all roles within the district reflect the students we are serving. It is critical to renew his contract as he has been showing up and fulfilling his role as an administrator with fidelity. Thank you.
We'll take over on that public comment. We have a long agenda, so one more. And then we have to move on. We have a couple of presentations and then a really long non-renewal that proceeded that we have to get to. Welcome, state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's Heather Heitmuller. I have a son, he's a junior, and he goes to Providence Career and Technical Academy. He's actually the gold medalist this year, the second year in a row for motors and controls in the electrical program. And he was a silver medalist freshman year. The issue I'm having, and it's been an ongoing issue with the school district, is that my son is dyslexic and dysgraphic, and I've gotten him tested. And I don't know if everyone around here knows, but parents pay for that testing many times. Either they pay for it because their medical insurance doesn't cover it, or part of the test is not covered. So people do pay for it, and it is thousands of dollars, if anyone in this room doesn't know that, to get a psychological test, which is what's required for dyslexia and dysgraphia. I've had my son tested 3 times because I've changed states. I've moved from state to state, and my test in Florida wasn't able to be used in Rhode Island. So I did pay to have him tested in 8th grade when I found out that my other test was more than 2 years old from the state of Florida, even though I had a standing 504 plan from the state of Florida. I wanted to get my son's case elevated to an IEP, so I got him retested. The year I got my son tested, the teachers did not follow through. There was a principal change at Nathan Bishop, and the English teacher was on a permanent leave. So none of the paperwork was turned back into Gorshon Medical. At the end of the year, after one of the guidance counselors was a permanent substitute for the English program, she wrote my son a quick 504. He got into the PCTA school. Obviously, everything closed for COVID. So I was never able to once again ever use that test to get my son an IEP. Here I am, and he's a junior, and I'm still battling it out because PCTA did not have a 504 coordinator until May of last year. That's the last time my son's plan was reviewed. I'm still struggling in the school to prove to people that dysgraphic people have a hard time writing, and it's actually like a real disability. I battle it out with teachers that just fail to follow his 504, or they just don't believe me. And I literally feel like I'm going crazy as a parent. I've been fighting this battle since my kid was in 1st grade. I'm always standing up for my child. I'm always showing up. I'm on your PTO. I'm your PAC leader. I'm on your ILT committee. I've come to the school board before. But if I'm doing this with a college degree, English is my first spoken language, and I am having this difficulty with the program to get an IEP or a 504 for my child, other students that don't have those resources and don't have a parent like that, like I have 2 weeks paid vacation, and I can literally say I probably spent 1 week of it at schools. Okay, but not everybody has this, and not everyone can take off from 9 to 3 to come in and battle it out with their kids, because those are the only times you can make these appointments with the school. And I just want to say, I feel that if my son's in this position, he's having this kind of difficulty, and I'm a parent that shows up. Like, how many students do we have in this district on that IEP? And like, I go to the ILT committee. How many of those, where we're saying kids don't have the test scores and stuff, how many of them could really have an issue like this that happened during COVID, that couldn't get an IEP, that couldn't get their stuff reviewed? Now their test is beyond the 2-year limit, and they either have to pay to get it done again, or their parents have to keep fighting this battle. And I just find it very upsetting. I was furious today and just battled it out with an English teacher, at the school once again, because my son was forced to do a written assignment on paper and pen, which I think is ridiculous in a computer age anyway, but I'm just done, and I just have nowhere to turn, and that's why I'm just expressing it here. I hope somebody has some empathy or can understand that when students try to advocate for themselves, that they are having difficulty in school, that's a discussion for the English teacher to make with a guidance counselor or something like that. It's not for them to decide that that student needs more practice reading or more practice writing, especially if they've gotten tested. And that's all I have to say tonight. And I hope you understand because you hear my rant, but I'm tired of it.
Can you make sure that Madam Clerk has your contact information? Superintendent, can you make sure that Sandy Stewart, our Chief of Support Services, gets in contact with the parent? And if possible, Chair, Madam Secretary, if it's more of a policy issue and you're able to join the meeting, I'd be really interested in hearing whether this is like a systemic issue we can tackle as a policy or whatever the case may be. So thank you for coming tonight, and I'm sorry that it took these hoops.
Yeah, no, it's all right. I've been doing it for 11 years, so you know what? I only got one more. I keep saying to myself, one more year at high school, one more year with school, I won't have to talk to any more teachers.
So I'm sorry I've been jumping around a lot today. I'm a little distraught by the subject matter that we're talking tonight. But is there any more school board member comments? Ms. Aiken?
Update, President.
Just wanted to let you know that I did have my opportunity to attend the National School Board Conference earlier this month, and I attended a lot of listening sessions about school finances. And there's a lot of grants out there that I reviewed that might be able to help fill some of our budgetary gaps. And I also met with a lot of vendors of various categorical perceptions. So I'm going to be forwarding some information to you regarding this, and then you can disseminate it as you see fit to the leadership team and to the superintendent and the various departments. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Aiken. So I'd like to say some words tonight. I'm going to take off my school board president hat for a little while and speak as Erlen, the community member. Erlen from Providence, grew up and was born and raised here. Rich Norris is one of my mentors. Rich Norris is someone who, when I began my career as an educator, when I started off my professional career as an educator, and I knew nothing about being in front of the classroom, was the first person to reach out to me and say, hey, come to my house, like let's chop it up. And we did. Mr. Norris brought me under his wing, mentored me, nurtured me, and showed me what it was like to be a true educator in every sense of the word. We have so many professionals in our district that just go through the motions, that show up, punch in, do the bare minimum, clock out. Go punch in, go on Twitter, complain about everything under the sun, clock out. Mr. Norris is not one of those educators. Mr. Norris goes in, punches in at 5 a.m., doesn't punch out till 10 p.m., and probably sends emails while he's lying in bed next to his wife at night. That's Mr. Norris. I have memories of me and Mr. Norris shuttling kids in our cars and bringing them to college visits. I have memories of me and Mr. Norris shuttling kids in our cars and taking them to trampoline parks because their parents work and couldn't do recreational fun things with them like that. I have fond memories of me and Mr. Norris mobilizing and operationalizing and professionalizing a gentleman's academy, making it an official 501c3, creating a logo, a website, going out there and creating a donor base. I have vivid memories of me and Mr. Norris working together alongside each other, performing these acts. Mr. Norris is one of those people who keeps his head in his work, stays underneath the fray, and doesn't get caught up in the drama. It's a collective failure for us as a district to have arrived at a policy decision that puts people, educators, professionals like Mr. Norris out of a job. It's a collective failure. I'm not saying it's a failure that we're cutting the position. I'm not saying it's a failure that the superintendent is making these very tough decisions because the money has to come from somewhere. But the fact that we have educators in our district who ride or die for this district, who bleed Providence, breathe Providence, are Providence, and they're finding themselves out of a job with nowhere to go in this district, it sends a very chilling message to the rest of the educators out here who give it 110% every single day. That's me talking without my president hat on. We as the board have a very specific role to play tonight. It's prescribed in law what our role is, and it's not very flexible. I ask that we keep that in mind, because if I had it my way and I had a magic wand that I could wave tonight, I'd fire 99% of the other educators in this district before I fire Mr. Norris. I'd make sure that he's in my district. He'd be the first person I'd call. And our loss is going to be someone else's heist. So thank you for entertaining my conversation tonight. Next, we have already passed a few of the items in section 7 because, again, I've been jumping around. We are now on item 7.6, which is the resolution for the implementation of ethnic studies in Providence schools. We have a motion to approve. Motion to approve. We have a motion by Vice President Escobar. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Stevens. Discussion.
I would like to say that
Vice President.
Is there a mic situation today? We have mics at work. No, the mic's not working.
It's working.
It's working. It didn't feel like it was working. Sorry.
You normally can hear it up here. We can't.
Yeah, so it's kind of weird. I just want to quickly acknowledge all the folks that came here tonight to speak in favor of this, in support of this. Happy to bring this resolution forward, and thank you for the support. So just want to acknowledge that, the students have brought this forward, and I know that through our recognized district does acknowledge this as a need and have been working to it. And I think we will get there eventually to a quality ethnic studies program. I know recently that our youth has met with various members of the district to really sort of talk about that. And I think the resolution is sort of an advocacy tool with the staff to guideline to hopefully get us there. So I just want to acknowledge all that. This is all the work that has been done prior to this, and it's just another step forward for the board to acknowledge this important piece of curriculum that we need in our schools.
Thank you, Vice President. Any further discussion on the item? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Next, we have school board committee updates. Policy committee, Secretary Hughes.
Can you all hear me? No.
Can you guys hear me, Secretary Hughes?
Mike, yes?
Yeah, sounds.
Okay. I'll try to use my outside voice inside instead. We last met as a policy committee the first Wednesday of April, and we went through a number of policies that we're going to explore tonight. First, I want to draw your attention to the item on the agenda that's 9.4, the Student Code of Conduct. Tonight is our second read and hopefully adoption of that. If you don't recall from our previous meeting, that Student Code of Conduct was worked on primarily by Dr. Onye and her team in collaboration with many, many, many other teams in our, pardon me 1 second, no, across the district. This Student Code of Conduct policy sets the framework for what our goals are with the Student Code of Conduct, and the next step will be to develop regulations around that policy. So that work will take time, and we'll have additional opportunities for engagement through various spaces. So I encourage folks to reach out if they are interested in participating in regulation development there. Another policy that we looked at for the first time was the school closing policy. I know one of our public commenters acknowledged that earlier. So that's up tonight for our first read here on the board. This is a policy, as you may recall, that was last reviewed by the board in 1991 and was well overdue for some refreshing and to bring it to our community in a way that includes folks in the process in a more transparent and participatory way. This is still the first read, so I want to encourage all of you, you can access the draft of this policy in tonight's agenda. It's linked there if you haven't had a chance to read it yet. We can continue to explore and take public comments via the policy committee would be best. And our next meeting for the policy committee is next Wednesday already. Usually we're not so tight after the school board meeting, but we moved this meeting tonight to this week because of the April break last week. We also have a first read tonight of the suicide prevention, response, and recovery policy. This policy has come, this is a new policy for us, and this is in part due to some statewide legislation, including the Nathan Bruno Act. Our student supports, wellness, and many other teams have been working hard to develop this policy. They've looked at policies in other states, in other areas, and aligned this policy with with that state legislation. There are some really exciting components in this policy, including reach out and education for all students in grades 6 and up, I believe, as well as some parent education and engagement pieces, training for staff, and various levels of response, prevention, etc. So that is a really exciting policy, and I'm really excited to support that here. Finally, the last policy that we're looking at tonight, or that we looked at in our committee, was the graduation policy. I know we have, our policy committee looked at this. There have been some changes in the state regulations around high school graduation requirements, and they're quite significant. So our policy committee recommended that we hear from the team presenting that policy to talk to us about the changes in that. because that's a really critical policy for our entire community to understand. And so, Mr. President, with your permission, I'd love to hear sometime before we take a vote on the policy and planning items, if we could hear that graduation policy and take it out of order.
So we'll move it probably before the budget presentation, or maybe the first presentation, or actually we can have the presentation during discussion of the action item and do the presentation.
Excellent. And due to time, I respect my colleagues are concerned about the length of this meeting, but it is really critical that our policy committee felt strongly that parents, students, educators, and other school leaders need to understand what these changes are in this policy. So we will ask that team presenting to keep your presentation brief. Again, if you look at our agenda online, you can access the presentation in its entirety if you'd like to look at that in more detail, but we will ask to have a brief 5 minutes if possible to go through some of those bullet points.
Thank you. Next, we have Finance Committee update. Chair Aiken.
Thank you, President. We did not hold a finance meeting for April. We did not have a quorum. However, I did receive a briefing on the 2 contracts that are coming before you this evening. The first, they are both renewals and they're related to personnel marketing and recruiting efforts. The first one is the LinkedIn corporate contract. It's generated for more seasoned professionals for recruitment. And it uses search engines on keywords and phrases to attract candidates in the educational arena. It also is used to post jobs and to publicize career fairs and cast a wider net for audiences. It does additionally use the newly adapted AI feature, which brings a higher level of personalization to each recruitment interaction. And that contract price reflects $14,970 and reflects a reduction of almost $10,000 from the prior year, which is mainly due to the reduction of recruiter corporate usage, but also a credit for the renewal. The second contract is related to the Handshake contract. It's the #1 college career network in the nation. The platform interacts with over 1,500 colleges nationwide and reaches over 75,000 students who may have an interest in a teaching career. That contract is also reflecting a steep discount, and that contract amount is, give me a moment. That contract amount is reflected at $56,000 even, with $24,000 discount if it's signed before renewal of May 17th. So about a 30 percentile savings. I am pleased to present both of these contracts to you for the board approval this evening. Thank you.
Next, we have Health and Wellness Committee, Chairman Mahingabu.
Thank you, Mr. President. We had a meeting last month. We focused mainly on planning for our next event in May 14 from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. So we have 7 students from Central High Schools, including classical, as part of their physics project. They wanted to create a mental health fair this year. I'm very thankful to Chile and the district that helped me work my committee preparing this event, and also for Lifespan for sponsoring this event. So this is a formal invitation to the whole board to come and support our students. And also I'm asking for you guys to come early to help us set our tables.
Thank you. Madam Chair, if you can send out a calendar invite to the board for the Health and Wellness. Thank you so much, and thank you for your leadership on that, Chairman. CTE Committee update, Vice President Escobar.
Yeah, very quickly, maybe we schedule our meeting, we have that usually tomorrow.
Thank you, Vice President Escobar. Next, we have a update from our school building committee. Mr. Matuk?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The superintendent mentioned a number of building projects in his own report, so I don't think there's any reason to repeat that. The one thing that I would say, and I would ask the superintendent and the board chair to do what you can to evaluate the voting membership of the school buildings committee, because we failed to reach quorum repeatedly over the last year, including at the most recent session when we were supposed to approve the Spaziano Middle School project to proceed to actual construction planning, and we were not able to do that. And there are several voting members of the committee who are literally never there. And I don't know myself who's responsible for membership of the school building committee, but from my observation, many of the members are not taking their roles seriously. They don't come to the meetings, and it's impeding the ability of the committee to meet its goals.
George, I can work with you on that. The membership is really set forth in regulation, but I can work with you if you have issues. Okay.
That's a great flag, Mr. Matuk, especially if there's action items coming before the committee and requiring approval. And it's just happening. I don't know, but let's have a meeting offline so we can discuss how to clean that up. But for the public, that's not a creature of the school board.
That's right.
We have a designated seat on that committee. We're not responsible as manager. Nonetheless, it's important to the work that we do, so we'll pay attention to it. So we'll go on to action items. Item 9.1, we have the first read of the suicide prevention, response, and recovery policy. Do I have a motion to approve? Motion by Secretary Hughes. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Chair Aiken. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
9.1 is approved. Next, we have the school closing policy. First read. Do I have a motion to approve? I have a motion by Secretary Hughes. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Matuk. Any discussion?
I have a question, I think, for Charlie. If the board were to pass this school closure policy, to what extent is it, does RIDE have to abide by this policy in future decisions to close schools? Is this a binding policy, or is this really a symbolic gesture that we would like to send a message to RIDE about how to conduct these proceedings in the future?
It's a good question. I think it's more than a symbolic gesture. It would have the force and effect of policy certainly following the conclusion of the state takeover. So if you're looking for a policy that will control the operation of school closures, certainly post-Crowley Act, this policy can do that. While the Crowley Act is in existence and during the period of state takeover, there's certain retained authority regarding the budget, personnel, and program adequacy in the district that remains in the Crowley Act delegate to the commissioner. So to the extent that those policies contradict that authority, the Crowley Act will control.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Matuk. Any further discussion on item 9.2?
No,
Vice President?
I stepped out for a little bit, come back here and hear the question. I guess with the school closure policy, my hope is that this is an agreed sort of guideline between the board and the district, how we should move going forward. The district did get this policy, did provide feedback. So that is my hope, with full recognition where legally, where we stand at all times. It's a very, very, very good project. But that is my hope, given just how the previous closures have been and what it takes. And I think working with the board in a collaborative aspect, working with the community in a collaborative aspect for future decisions down the line. That is the hope. And I feel optimistic that this is what we can we can partner on working at home.
Ms. Nguyen?
Yeah, I think if my memory serves correct, when we reviewed this, policy about 2 weeks ago, I think what came up for me and what we sort of discussed was that this policy may need to be in collaboration with an additional policy. This policy as it stands, deals with, procedure once the decision has been made to close the school. It does not, if my memory serves correct, talk about the nature or approach in which that decision should be derived, right? And so I just want to name that for the public and for board members that I feel really passionately that there needs to be an intersection policy that expresses the approach to like how decisions get made about schools and not just what the process is once the decision is made.
I don't want to speak for the policy committee, but I was reading the verbiage before, and I think the way that this policy is written now is that it takes force once a recommendation to close a school has been made, but the action happens before a final decision would be made, and then the school board, although we don't now have power to make this binding, but in the future the school board should, that the school board would make a final recommendation about whether or not the school should be closed. Is that, Mr. Chairman?
Madam Secretary?
Yes, I think that reflects the intent. We definitely continue to discuss at policy committee, and I expect that we will have this on our agenda next week again, to talk through that. I think we would also have the opportunity after passing a school closure policy to develop regulations around that policy to talk through more details of the implementation process for that. But to Mr. Mitchell's point, the concept here with this policy is that the recommendation or sort of an initial notification is the first step, and that's requiring some direct notification to the affected community as well as like public posting on the website, and then as well as including contingency plans both for students and families as well as staff, and then a series of community engagements, and then it would come before the board for that discussion. So I think to Vice President Escobar's point, I think our hope is that the board is developing this policy not in reaction to a specific event or closure that's happened recently, but taking those situations and hearing from the community and trying to find ways that we could all do better, and help work with the district to develop this policy in a way that feels possible, because we don't want to create a policy that is so outside the scope of how the district could make that decision. Like we want to get that information from them. We've spent some time talking through what would be the parameters that we're asking the district to provide within that initial recommendation, before it would come before the public. But we can certainly spend more time at the policy committee talking through some of these details. Again, we welcome feedback from the public. We welcome additional feedback from the district and from fellow board members. Please do join us if you can't be at that meeting. You can email us at boardservices@ppsd.org, and we'll make sure that that information gets to policy committee.
Thank you. Any further discussion on item 9.2? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm just abstaining. I didn't get to read it, so I'm just gonna abstain for now.
Mr. Stevens abstains. Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Item 9.3, the graduation policy. So we're gonna have a motion to approve, and then during discussion, we'll have a presentation. Do I have a motion to approve item 9.3?
Motion.
I have a motion for Mr. Stevens. Do I have a second? Second, Vice President Escobar. Discussion. Do we have representatives from the district to come briefly present on item 9.3? Again, we do the more robust autopsy dissection of policies at the committee level, but this is an extremely important policy. Therefore, the chair's recommendation was to have a brief overview for the benefit of our members and the public. So welcome. State your name for the record and introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Paula Dillon. I am the Chief Academic Officer for Providence as of February 12th. So nice to meet all of you. I can do the presentation in one of two ways. We could go through the actual presentation, or I could speak to
Is your mic on?
It is on. Can you hear me?
That's better.
Better.
But to the district, this is like 3 meetings in a row where our mics aren't working. I get it, we're an afterthought to y'all, but like it's getting to a point where I'm taking it disrespectfully. So for the next meeting, can we please have our microphones working? Thank you.
I'm so sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I can do it in one of two ways. I can go through the presentation slides, or I can speak to the changes if you want a more condensed version.
If you could speak to the changes, I think that would be most helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. So the graduation policy for the students who are class of 25, 6, and 7 have not changed. So this is for the incoming 9th graders, so your class of 2028. So what we're speaking about tonight only has to do with students who are currently in 8th grade and who will be entering 9th grade in the fall. The reason for the graduation policy changes are there were changes in the secondary regulations for the entire state of Rhode Island. So all school districts in Rhode Island are in the process of making these changes as we speak. When we look at the changes, math remains at 4 credits. However, one significant change is a possibility for our CTE students who are in their senior year and are successfully on their way to complete their CTE program to use a CTE class as the math class if it's connected to math. Right? So that's very, very helpful for our CTE students. So it can be a CTE math that's directly connected to their program in lieu of a 4th math class. So that is a change. English language arts, there are no changes. History and social studies, there have there's one change. It's still 3 credits, just like it has been. However, our students will also engage in a performance-based, project-based civics project. And so all students will need to engage in that civics work as part of their graduation. World language is the same. It's 2 years of world language. Just want to point out that students who have a primary language that was not English have the opportunity to take an assessment, and they can receive both a seal of biliteracy, but they can also receive credits for passing each level of the assessment. So in lieu of taking level 1 French and level 2 French, if they were to pass the test, they could get up to the level that they passed in terms of credits. So if they pass 4 levels, they can have 4 credits of French. So we want to celebrate the languages, and that's a really positive change. In addition, students are able to have an exemption for world language if they are a team at school and their parents agree that that is an appropriate decision. Arts, computer science, physical education, and health. There's only one change to that. The technology credit is now a 0.5 computer science credit. And the computer science course is being updated so that it includes cybersecurity. It will include AI, it'll include the computing processes. So the major differences are the cybersecurity and the AI components which are being added.
I just want to, did you want to mirror what you're saying with the slide? Which then I think you might be on slide 7. I want to see if you want.
Yeah,
you want to
it's
do that.
between 6
Yeah.
and 7.
Yeah.
So Let me see, I think we've done all 6.
Because we have this in front of us, but for folks in the audience, they don't.
So they can see those
Yeah.
answers, absolutely. The, thank you. For everyone, this is Tim Howard. He works in our department as.
And Tim, feel free to grab a chair. So, yeah.
I'm good. I've been sitting for a while.
All right. Capture it.
Additional college preparatory units. So if a student does opt in the CTE program to take CTE as their math class, they do need to take 2 college preparatory electives of their choice. If they are taking the 4 math classes, they take 1 additional college preparatory elective of their choice. College preparatory electives include things like world language, AP courses, different computer courses, technology courses, anything that a college CCRI or beyond would accept as a credit. In addition, financial literacy remains the same. All students must demonstrate proficiency on financial literacy. Civics, as I noted, that is a graduation requirement. It will be embedded in American government. All students are required to take that course, and they are also required to complete the project-based performance task that I mentioned earlier. Some other opportunities that students have, some of the other opportunities students have are things like receiving credit for their work-based learning through CTE or for internships. So students who are engaged in work-based learning or internships will now be able to receive credit for that work. In the past, they did not receive academic credit for work-based learning or internships. There's also support and flexibility for caregiving youth and students who work. So schools will work with those students to create plans that make sense for them in order to be able to help them to be successful. It might require schedule shifts. It might require some different opportunities for work-based learning. But the school team will work with the students who are caregiving youth or students who have to work to support their families to provide plans for them. In addition, something that is allowable, which we would need to develop, is something called a flex credit. An example of a flex credit might be an integrated social studies and English class where a student could receive both their English and social studies credits within the one class because it's an integrated topic and it's covering the standards of both. That frees up time for students to be able to pursue other areas of interest within their studies. And so that's an opportunity that districts have that we can start to build and think about. We had a standalone PBDA class, performance-based graduation requirement class. We are taking that and changing that into the civics requirement that is now a part of the students' experiences. In addition, the last piece is that qualified students can also engage in a readiness pathway. That is a plan that students, their families, and their school team would engage in if they are taking a pathway that's different than the traditional graduation requirements that we spoke about this evening. So it might mean that they're not taking Algebra 2, in place of that they might be taking a different course that is designed to meet their unique needs. For math, students take Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2 as their core graduation requirements, plus one course that is beyond Algebra 2. So students in a readiness pathway might not do that. They might not take a world language, but they'll have a program that's personalized and designed to meet their needs. Those are the major changes. I don't know if you have any specific questions. Again, this is for the incoming 9th grader students who are 8th grade. We'll be having parent evenings. We'll be having different opportunities for parents to come and ask questions for the 8th graders. We'll also be doing nights for the 8th graders around some of these pieces so that they understand what their requirements are as high school students.
Thank you. Questions, comments from school board members? Ms. Newman?
Thank you for that. Just to clarify, and maybe you said this, I apologize if you did. There was a change, right, that like, your math credits can't be, like, one of them can't be completed in 8th grade, right? They all have to happen in high school. Isn't that a significant change as well?
Sorry, yes, so in 8th grade, you can still take Algebra 1, but you have to take 4 math classes once you get to high school as well.
Right, so that 8th grade would not count.
It goes on the transcript, but it's not one of your credits for graduation. Yeah, so the students still get credit for it, it still goes on the transcript, but it's not counted toward the 22.
Jerry?
Thank you. To piggyback on that question too, in regards to the CTE class and the substitution for that math credit.
Yes.
Could you give some examples of what those substituted CTE class could be?
Sure,
To make up for that.
Many of our CTE programs have quite a bit of math integrated in them. Construction, for example, has significant geometry skills. Our computer-aided drafting has significant skills in it. Entrepreneurship has significant math skills. So almost any CTE program, either through the entrepreneurship class that they take or through the actual technical classes that they're taking, have the math skills embedded into it that would allow them to count that as their 4th math class. Again, it would be for the seniors who are on track and have completed the other 3 credits already.
Thank you.
Chairman Mahingable?
Just a comment. I just want to thank you in the district for really having the civic projects and also focusing on financial literacy. I think it's going to help our students.
I agree. Yeah, very, very important.
Thank you, Chair. Any further comments, questions? Good? Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Stevens?
really quick, I'm happy with the CAO officers here. I guess this is geared towards Charlie. Was the CAO officer supposed to come before the school board and be reviewed? I know they went before finance, but I believe that an agreement said that it's supposed to go to the school board meeting and be reviewed by the school board. Can you please respond?
I think the CAO position would qualify as a senior leadership position under that resolution.
So they were supposed to come before the board, right?
I believe they're supposed to come before the board for advice.
So I know that this isn't, I know she's already here, but the next meeting, can we please make sure to add that to the agenda to make sure we're abiding by state law and regulations? Thank you.
We can talk about that offline. I thought they had gone before the finance committee already.
Yeah, that is correct, President. We did have a detailed review of the CAO position, and all those pertinent questions were answered at that meeting. I believe, Mr. Stevens, you were present to ask some pertinent questions.
I was, but according to the regulation, the law is supposed to go before the school board, not just the finance. We was all supposed to review that title.
We can discuss that with the council offline. I don't have any opposition. We can send an invitation to the CAA to come before the school board. However, how it's prescribed in law, it's not prescriptive whether they need to come before the whole
Or
board.
a subcommittee of the board, that's correct.
So, but we can have the discussion offline because there's nothing from stopping us from inviting the person to the full board.
Well, I was under the impression the full board, not a specific committee.
No, I think the board can I'll go back through the actual statute. That was part of the Zurier amendments, but I believe the board could have it referred to a specific committee for purposes of that advice.
Thank you.
We can talk about that offline. There's an appetite for the CAA to come forward, and I agree, it's an important position. If there's an appetite for the CAA to come forward and do a Q&A and each with us, that's fine too. All right, any further discussion on 9.3? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Item 9.4, Student Code of Conduct, second read. I have a motion to approve.
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Stevens, second by Chairman Mahingable. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Next, we have item 10.1 and 10.2, which Chair Aiken reported on during her committee update. Do I have a motion to approve items 10.1 and 10.2?
So moved.
I have a motion to approve both items. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? I'm sorry.
No,
Go
it's
ahead,
okay. I have a question. Mr. Chairman, can you remind me what are the prices on those contracts again?
Yes, the handshake is $56,000 even. It does reflect a discount of $24,000 because it is a renewal. The LinkedIn contract is $14,979, so slightly below $15,000. That reflects a reduction of almost $10,000 from the last year contract.
Thank you for that. I asked because I find it, and I understand that we have line items for different purposes. I find it hard for me to with integrity, vote yes on any, spending money on any databases or technology if we're cutting positions. We can't replicate what Rich Norris does or Carrie Kelly does, and so I would, when we vote, I would oppose because I think we need to put the resources in people and not in platforms. Only then would I be comfortable investing in more tools like this, but really the people are the tools, and I think that's where we need to put our money. If we are renewing contracts and have money for this, we should just be putting that towards people.
I understand your concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Newman. Any further discussion on the items?
Really, is there,
Mr. Stevens?
since we have someone that's going to oppose it, is there someone from the district that can just give us an overview of the contracts? Sorry, I know we got a long agenda.
Yeah, all the HR representatives are out actually at a career fair this evening. But maybe somebody here can.
I don't think you can see deputy superintendent.
Yeah, they're the superintendent.
So if anybody wants to come, here's what I don't want to do. I don't want to relitigate the entire thing, which has already come out of, well, we didn't have a quorum, but it came out of with a positive recommendation from the chair of finance. I don't want to relitigate it. However, if there's a representative from the district who would like to come up to the board and give a brief overview of what these items are, that's welcome. If not, the standard that I've been operating with is to be deferential to committee chairs and their recommendation on the items. But we can entertain that further in discussion. Is there anybody from the district who would come up here and briefly give us an overview of these items?
Mr. President, really quick as well.
Is there anybody here from the district?
I know,
No?
Mr. President.
Mr. Stevens?
I know that, it's typical practice to review these at, the committee, but if board members come to this meeting and have concerns and want someone from the district to overview it, legally, I feel as if it's appropriate to have that be reviewed.
I agree, Mr. Stevens. There's nothing legally prohibitive of that. However, best practices is we have multiple days to review these contracts. We have multiple days to ask questions of the chair. There's a thorough vetting in committee. There's numerous opportunities. Therefore, the procedures that I'm trying to implement as far as my presidency is to make our meeting at the full board level productive and efficient so we can get on to business. But I hear your concerns. There's nothing stopping us from asking that. We have.
And when we're dealing really quick, when we're dealing with taxpayers' dollars, I feel as if anyone has any question on the board, they can ask it. And if we request someone to review it, they can come and review it.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens, 100%. But again, I encourage, I'm not saying this can't happen. I encourage and invite everyone. I know it's hard with people's schedules to please come to the committee meetings. I extended an invite and asked everyone if they wanted to be a part of a committee, and some school board members declined. But I still, nonetheless, you're welcome to come and be a part of the dialogue.
Yeah, I'm a part of policy. I can't come to finance, but we can keep going. I'll just oppose,
No, I hear you, Mr.
That's
Stevens.
fine.
We have a representative who came forward, so just
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. I was out of the meeting for a minute.
So items 10.1 and 10.2, the board has requested a brief overview of the items.
Sorry.
I don't think your mic works anyway. Does it? Oh.
Can you hear me?
Ooh, there
all
you
right.
go. Sounds pretty good.
Very good. Very good. So we have two contract items before you this evening. One is Handshake, and the other one is LinkedIn. Both are marketing tools for our school district to certainly recruit candidates for our school district. One is certainly work with colleges and universities, and that's the Handshake tool, to certainly support our recruiting efforts so that we can reach candidates in colleges and universities across the United States. LinkedIn, I know many of you are familiar with LinkedIn because you're probably members of LinkedIn yourselves. That certainly support us and help us to certainly target certain candidates for hard to fill areas and also executive level positions within the central office area for positions that we're trying to fill. So both of those tools support our work in marketing and making sure that we have candidates available for us so that we can consider a PPSD. Each of those contracts, we had a reduction from last year to this year. With Handshake, I think we had a reduction with, I think it's $14,000 this year. Let me get those numbers for you right quick. What we have. Handshake was $91,300 last year. So what we did this year is looked at how we can certainly reduce the cost in looking at this marketing tool, and now it is $56,000. LinkedIn was $23,396 last year, and now it's $14,970. Let me just share with you that these are important tools for our work in human resources and wanted to certainly ensure that we have candidates available for us to certainly fill jobs, critical need jobs within our district. Any further questions from Mr. James?
I think we have candidates right here in our own city, and we should be spending the money on renewal contracts.
And also,
Mr. Stevens?
And also, last year I did approve this, and Angel brings some valid reasons, knowing that we have budget cuts and things like that. I just have a question with college, university, recruitment, and engagement. What positions do they normally fill with Handshake normally? Who typical positions that we hire within Handshake and that contract there?
Yeah, basically classroom teacher positions. We're recruiting those new candidates, new graduates, I should say, that are coming out of our colleges and universities. As you know, many of our colleges and universities have a virtual platform now. So using that tool to certainly recruit from our colleges and universities support that effort.
And how many have we hired within the last year?
I don't have that data for you, but I can tell you with the number of positions that we filled, those tools have been very successful for us as a district. And we're currently having a job fair this evening, and Handshake was certainly instrumental in certainly providing us with those early contract candidates from colleges and universities to certainly participate in our job fair for those hard to fill areas, such as mathematics, special education, science, etc.
I just wanted to say that I think I speak for everybody on the board. It's really disappointed, sad, and frustrated that Ms. Tuttleby and Mr. Norris are in the situation that they're in. At the same time, I think we can also recognize that the district has thousands of employees, and we need to continue to be able to attract world-class talent into positions that are available and for which they and other people from 360 might not have the appropriate certification for. So I appreciate what Ms. Newman is saying and the point that she raises, and I think it's also critical that in this situation that we're facing with large deficit looming, that we continue to be scrutinize as much as we can every contract and look for reductions. But I think we also owe it to the kids to continue to be able to attract world-class talent into the classrooms.
Interesting. Any further discussion? All right, so there was a motion to approve. There was a second. There was discussion. Let's do a roll call vote because it sounds like it might be a split vote. Madam Clerk, can you call roll?
George Matuk?
Aye.
Tony Aiken?
Aye.
Melissa Hughes?
Aye.
Ellen Norbert?
Aye.
Travis Escobar?
Aye.
Knight Dean Hebrew? Aye. Tyrell Stevens?
Abstain.
Angel Miller?
And Mr. Nina, did you vote?
No,
I'm sorry, Michael Nina, sorry.
I believe the motion carries. Motion carries. Items are approved. All right. Next, we have a presentation on the FY25 budget. Welcome, Mr. Scott. And get yourself settled and you can begin the presentation when you're ready.
It's in here. It's the other one.
Can folks hear me all right?
I don't know how Mr. James made it work.
Hello. All right, I'll do my best just to speak louder. Zach Scott, Deputy Superintendent, thank you so much for having me tonight. Obviously a very difficult evening, and I know budget presentations don't bring much levity, but I do think important context for both the decisions we have in front of us today as well as those that lie ahead. So I think important to share a little bit about where we've been and where we'll go in terms of our budget planning. So we've just in the spring, we were with the Finance Committee in March to do a presentation that had some of the information you'll see today, but we've built it out more. What we'll do today is have a more refined budget plan for next year before coming back in front of the board in May with the full detailed budget. And that will include our ordinances, which include our spending plan, our list of positions by department and school, and so we'll have all that level of detail. But obviously, we have a lot of that information under development, and so what you'll see here is our best plan in terms of closing our budget gap, and we'll share what we've been able to accomplish so far, as well as what lies ahead. I do think it's important first to spend some time on context here, and some of that context is not just about this year, but in prior years as well. So lots of numbers here, so I'll do my best to summarize what you have in front of you. So our focus tonight in this graph is on our local budget. And what you'll see here is how that local budget has changed over time on the revenue side. So the composition of money we get to fund our schools and our basic operating expenditures. A few things I will highlight. When you look over the past 10 years, the revenue to the school district has grown by 2.3%. And when you think of some of our basic costs like salaries, supplies, things like that, that's not too far off, maybe a little lower than what those expenses grow at. Though it's important to note that revenue has declined in recent years after some pretty significant growth in the former years. What I do think is particularly important is how the composition has changed over time, with state aid becoming a far more significant portion of our local budget. So state aid has grown at a little over 3%, while city aid has grown at less than 0.5%, with state aid now roughly 2/3 of our total revenue. And while you look at a percentage, percentage amount over time, 3% versus 0.5% doesn't maybe look as big as it could. What that equates to is an additional $75 million from the state over this time period, and just $5 million additional from the city over the past 10 years. So that, as you can imagine, makes sustaining some of our spending challenging and problematic, particularly as we are entering challenging times around declining enrollment, increased student need, and the expiration of COVID funds. So look at what this means on a per pupil basis. And I'll do my best to explain this chart. It's a little finance wonky, but I think, again, important to share the impact of how our funds that come to the district, what the impact is on the district. So let me walk you through each of these. The gray line you see is a consumer price index, which you can think of as what inflation looks like over time and what it takes to buy. In FY15, what it took to buy $1 now costs $1.25. So over that time, inflation has taken items that would normally cost $1 and it's grown by 25% over that time. That's the gray bar. The orange bar is the city of Providence's budget, and you'll see that tracks pretty closely with inflation. So as inflation has risen, as has the overall city of Providence budget. However, when you look at the Providence per pupil aid, so this is representative of the aid that comes in from the city to the school district, That covers all public students in Providence, both those who come to PPSD as well as those who attend charter schools, the Met and Davies, that city revenue covers. And what you'll notice is that over that time, for a while, that actually declined in nominal terms, but just kind of in the past few years has gone up slightly, but it's still hovering just above 100%. Meaning we get roughly $1 to spend from the city to cover expenses that now typically cost $1.25. And that is a challenge when you are trying to keep pace with some of your basic services. Certainly more problematic as you're entering turnaround and you're seeing student need grow dramatically. So while only one kind of measure of how we need to invest, but over that time we've seen our multilingual learner population grow dramatically from roughly 22% of our student body to 36%. So we are, to support our students effectively, we do need to increase those investments, but it becomes hard to do with the dollar amounts that we get. And people can feel free to jump in if they have questions about it.
Mr. Scott, so it's clear from the presentation that the city aid hasn't kept up with state aid as a proportionate share of the overall budget for the district. So, but I guess I would ask if we know in comparable cities, are there benchmarks for what percentage of the budget typically is coming from the city versus the state, to say, more definitively that, not only is the city not increasing its share, proportionate to inflation in the state, but it's also representing a disproportionately small share of the educational budget compared to comparable school districts.
Yeah, so I don't have the kind of definitive answer there. What I can share is some of my experience. Certainly, I actually don't think it's, to be honest, too dissimilar than many other urban districts in Rhode Island where the tax base of the city hasn't supported school districts, and also just some state regulations that don't require districts to invest in the ways in other places. From prior experience in Boston, it's actually the reverse. The city, the local budget has more that comes from the city of Boston than it does from the state of Massachusetts. Boston, I think, is unique. Has different tax base, different economy, and things like that. So it's not just not easy apples to apples. But I think there is some variation state to state given how different tax structures work, whether it's a state income tax or local income tax. So my one observation is compared to some like regionally, nationally, we're probably behind when you look at other urban districts in Rhode Island. They also, I think, face some of the challenges with underfunding.
So do other sizable districts in Rhode Island have a similar dynamic here, where the local municipality in the city of Newport or Pawtucket, for example, is not keeping up with the curve with the increase of state aid and inflation, or is it unique to Providence?
I think it is pronounced in Providence, but we're not the only urban that faces, probably not on the same scale, given the rise in CUD that we've had. But RITAC and other kind of statewide organizations do good research to see how far behind they kind of project districts or municipalities to be in supporting the district. What I would say is, obviously we're deeply intertwined with the success of the city, so we're all, you don't want to be competing for the same dollar amounts. But when you look at the city budget growing at that rate over time, tells you at least that there is some funding that could be, decisions could be made to fund the city differently, the district differently if they choose. If that orange line had tracked the PPSD budget, I would be giving you a different answer.
Thank you.
Jerry?
Zach, you gave an analogy of the spending of $1 for the city versus $1.25 for the school district. That's a 25 percentile difference. In the budget overview, it's reflected a cumulative of 20%. So that's a little bit of a fluctuation there. Can you is that just based on the CPI index? But it seems like a big gap there, that 5% analogy.
Yeah, so let me say the analogy again, and then I can maybe I misspoke, or you could share where it's not being clear. But so what this looks at is, pegging prices to FY15. So something that costs $1 in FY15 now costs $1.25. We only receive roughly $1, I guess, push between $1 and $1.05 to cover that, meaning we are getting $1.05 to cover what now costs $1.25. So all things being equal, we need to find more money to buy the same amount of things.
That makes more sense, thank you.
I'm sorry, when you say getting, you mean specifically from the city of Providence?
Yes.
Thank you.
So to talk a little bit about the obligations that the city has to fund the district. So there's fairly specific language under the Crowley Act that obligates the city to fund, and the language I'll quote here is directly from the statute, which is at the same level as in the prior academic year, increased by the same percentage as the state total of school aid is increased. So basically you look at how much the city had provided the year before, how much state aid increased that year, and then you would increase the contribution to the district at that amount. That would then compound each year, right? So it's what you can see from this graph. What starts as lines that are fairly close grow and spread over time as the disagreement over kind of the obligation differs. So what you'll see here, the gray line is what that obligation would be through the interpretation of the Crowley Act, which started at a little over 135, a little under 135 million. And then based on current projections is at 160 million for FY25. What you'll see on the blue line is what the city has included in their budget each year. And that was in FY21, 22, 23, 24, that was level funding without an increase to the district. The orange line you'll see is we reached a settlement agreement in 3 of the years to receive some of the funding. And then what you'll see with the red dot is what we proposed in the past 2 years. So we knew that the 155 or 160 was likely not achievable or possible by the city of Providence, so we have not pursued that maximum amount. But again, we've asked for roughly half of what we believe is owed under the Crowley Act. And again, while there, I guess a step in the right direction to see some increase for next year, is far below what is required under the law, and frankly, what we believe is adequate.
May I ask about that? Because we go through the same song and dance every year. We do this mediation to try to figure out what that really means. Like, have we ever sought, I don't know, I'm loose with my legal terms, a declaratory judgment on what that actually means, or some sort of legal interpretation, binding legal interpretation of what that language means?
So I have not participated in the litigation. We have gone to mediation for several years. As Zach said, we did reach a settlement through mediation twice. We now have how many years pending currently?
Just the current fiscal year.
Just the current fiscal year. So no, we've never received an actual declaratory judgment or ruling regarding the city's obligations relative to the Crowley Act.
So wouldn't that be helpful? So we're not in mediation every single year and spending money on litigation every single year and having this like finger pointing every single year?
I think we probably would. I mean, I feel your frustration. It is now to the point. I mean, to your point, the gap is so big that we all benefit from at this point some clarity, even if we're both coming. I'm sharing too much from something, but I agree. It is not getting clarity is becoming increasingly important because the gap is far beyond what either side should deal with.
And then in the meantime, there's legislation being introduced to define that for you. So
I know I was testifying against it last night. So.
Vice President.
I just think that's just such weird, it's a weird statute, just the Crowley Act in general, right? It's just assumed, and we also all recognize that the city financially is not in the greatest place as well. So, yeah, it's just weird.
Obviously, biased from where I sit. I think we have tried. We've recognized that the full amount is not achievable nor sustainable for the city. which we haven't pursued. I cannot understand anyone thinking it is reasonable or adequate to give 0 increases for 4 years in a row. Like, you don't have to be a lawyer to read that law and know that's just wrong. Let alone, you have student need increasing. Even if that wasn't happening, like, you are having to cut just to meet, like, giving teachers a 2% raise. Like, that's the part I struggle with. Like, I throwing out 15 million in 1 year is like hard for the city to do. But if you're doing just keeping pace year after year, like the challenge is when you fall behind 4 or 5 years, it's hard to make up on either side. All right, so just a bit on the revenue side. Let me turn a bit towards our expenditures, and this is again, this presentation is a little bit higher level before we start into May, when we'll have our specific budget details. But this gives you a brief overview of when we look at our spending plan for FY24, kind of the composition of this, and this is obviously large kind of buckets of items, but I think helpful to get a sense of when you think of the district and their local budget, where those funds go. So I'll talk first about our in-district budget, and then what we've noted here is our out-of-district budget. So our in-district budget, if you break down simply into school-based costs and centrally based costs, the vast majority of those expenses go to our schools, roughly 88%. And both in schools and central office, but particularly in our schools, much of that goes into staffing. So as a district, when you look at salaries and benefits all in, that's about 75% of all of our spending. That is very typical for most school districts. We're a people intensive organization. And so that is where much of our spending goes. But aside from kind of the school-based and centrally based personnel costs, we obviously have service costs and our transportation and custodial contracts and other things like that. The out-of-district costs that I'll note includes 2 big buckets. One is our contribution to public schools of choice, including charter schools, the Met and Davies. We are, from the revenue we get in from the city, we are then obligated to pay out on a per pupil basis to those schools. That portion of that, I believe, is roughly a little over 30 million of that 60 million. And then a big chunk of the remainder, which has increased in the recent years and will be noted as a spending pressure for the upcoming fiscal year, is our out-of-district special education. So that has been based on an increased need as well as a scarcity of special education teachers. We've seen some growth on that. You'll probably note this from prior presentations, but this is how we try to organize our spending and planning for the coming year. And it's really oriented around our turnaround action plan. And so you'll see the 4 pillars of our turnaround action plan, as well as a note underneath that help guide some of our stimulus spending. So how we would use that to both reinforce and speed up some of our investments under our top tiers. So when we look ahead for FY25, we are looking to sustain those investments that have proven effective, to align resources with rising student need, to increase decision-making at the school level, to better align resources with student need, and to plan for long-term financial sustainability. So I want to talk through kind of how we've aligned the initial spending plan to a number of those items. The first is around sustaining those capital investments. So one that we saw in this past year was the addition of behavior interventionists, more than what you'll see here, but we were able to retain through our Title funding, Title I funding, approximately 22 behavior interventionists. And these are individuals in our highest need schools, particularly those with specialized programming, that are focused exclusively on supporting students that are having increased behavioral needs, something we've seen pretty acutely throughout the pandemic and after the pandemic. We are also seeking to double our investment in translation and interpretation services for families. Frankly, we are already spending double the amount than in our local budget. We were just having to cover the second half of that through our ESSER spending. We know continuing to support our families with interpretation and translation services when they come to our schools, when they're reviewing IEPs, when we're reviewing documents from the district is incredibly important. So we will have to absorb that into our local budget.
Zach, how much of this is a DOJ agreement?
A significant portion of that.
There's no flexibility around that. We have to continue to fund these things outside of our discretion.
I will say there are many things in the DOJ agreement, as cumbersome as that is supportive of families and students, and so it is something we will. Similarly, and related to that agreement as well, is sustaining our investment in supporting teachers seeking their ESL reimbursement. So we've nearly doubled the number of teachers with the ESL reimbursement certification in order to better meet our rising multilingual learner needs. That number started at 2,400 in 2020, but we've been able to increase it over the past several years to support teachers as they get that much needed certification. We've also had investments in our assessment and learning management platforms. These are ones that touch every student and every faculty member most every day and support how we deliver learning and how we assess learning across the district each year. When we look at meeting rising student needs, we are adding 12 special education classrooms at the kindergarten and grade 1 level next year. That's the one of the most significant increases, I think, in special education classrooms we've had in prior years. And this, in large part, is we've added a large number of kindergartens, pre-kindergartens, which you see bullet below. And so as those students matriculate up, we want to make sure we're prepared with the appropriate setting for those students, because we've seen an increase in the number of pre-kindergarten students coming with increased needs. And so we anticipate those needs continuing in the years ahead. And then it's the last bullet here, but it is really an important driver of our budget. And we'll share it on the next slide. Is the increase in out-of-district placements year over year has grown, and that is based on increased needs, particularly at our early grades, but also a scarcity of teachers to fill those positions.
Zach, can you give us an example of how, like a practical example? Student wants to enroll in our district. When is this trigger?
Yeah, so it can happen, and Ms. Stewart, Chief Stewart can share more the next time she's with you. But it can manifest in a couple of ways. One, a student comes in, they're in a classroom, and the team goes through all the supports they need to support that student, and they realize they cannot support that student in the public school setting because their needs are so severe. So that's one. A second might be a student, kindergarten student who is enrolling potentially in the autism spectrum. There's not a seat in one of our classrooms because we are now full, or we haven't been able to find a teacher to fill vacancies. So rather than coming to the district, they would be placed in an out-of-district setting that can appropriately serve those students. But it's obviously, as you can imagine, not what we want to do as a district, particularly if we can support them with our own services. It's particularly expensive, and so it's something we are working actively on to figure out how we address it. But as you add classrooms to support like this rising need, the pool of special educators is not getting any bigger. So it becomes harder and harder as you grow and add classrooms that you're like the number of teachers that fill those classrooms, frankly, isn't getting much bigger right now. And then the third is planning for long-term financial sustainability. And so this has been through several of the tough decisions we've had to make over the course of the winter and spring this year. One was the accelerated closure of Gilbert Stewart. That school had just 7 8 years. It was kind of like one more year. But both due to challenges with ensuring we were adequately staffed at that school, but also for financial reasons, accelerated the closure of that school for the upcoming school year. We've already heard about this already tonight, but the restructuring of J360, while not solely a financial decision, there are financial implications to that that support some of the gap closing measures we need to take. We've realigned bell times to improve transportation efficiency. So we had met with 2 school communities in Pleasant View and Veazey in February, January, February, and then notified them of that change in March, which we believe will reduce the number of buses we need and therefore save money on transportation. We are anticipating a roughly 18% reduction in FTEs in the central office, both through the closing of vacancies as well as the reduction of staff. And then school-based reductions, obviously, much of our spending is in schools. And so when we're closing any budget gap, it is hard to do that without some impact to school staff. And we'll talk through, you'll see a brief summary of what the different kind of position categories we have when making these reductions. To talk quickly through more before we get into the updated projections for this coming year, 2 quick notes that I'll point to for the note on how we support schools and school-based decision making, as well as the work we've done around our central office reorganization. So in student-based budgeting, I know I've shared this with this group before. We are now in our 2nd year of implementation. A number of goals and values that it helps us do, but it allows us to better align allocations to schools based on student need. So rather than just allocating staff to schools, we look at the needs of those the students at the school. So students that have specialized need, students that are multilingual learners, students experiencing poverty. We are allocating additional funds to those schools. It allows schools to better understand the funds that come to them and then better make decisions closest to the students in front of them. So again, you're in a 2nd year, and while I think we're moving in the right direction, still much to learn among our school leaders and the central office staff. Obviously, this year, a lot of those decisions were challenging decisions for our school leaders. We are thankful for their leadership during this difficult time because we often know it meant, compared to prior years, rather than picking one new thing, you're having to decide among several either positions or other investments that you had, which one you might be able to retain for the following year. So we think it was helpful in making sure schools were able to make the decisions closest to them, but we know it was hard, particularly for our school leaders. To share a little bit about our central office reorganization, and I'll share more about this when we go through our gap closing process. But we looked to reorganize departments in our central office that better meet student needs, as well as achieve roughly $4.6 million in savings. 3.6 of that was to cover ESSER funded positions. So not that a position was ESSER funded, it necessarily meant it was eliminated, but we knew we needed to find that amount of funding given the expiration of ESSER funding in the fall. And we had also identified $1 million to close our budget gap. So together that represents $4.6 million, roughly 18% of our central office personnel. We went through a process with each of our chiefs and asked them to submit different levels of reductions for their departments. We then had discussions both individually and as a group to understand how best to achieve those goals outlined in our turnaround action plan, knowing that oftentimes we would be making hard decisions to do that. Just wanted to note, and this will come through in our discussions later, but a decision was made to conduct a reorganization of the academics department with a new organizational structure and roles and responsibilities to better meet school needs. And so that reorganization was done both to provide better service, but also to help close the budget gap mentioned above. We went through the process of meeting back with each department head about decided upon cuts, and then have begun and are nearly concluded with notifying staff members whose positions are impacted.
That's a clarifying question. How many of the positions that are getting in there were just strictly using ESSER funds or COVID money? Like, we're using one-time funds.
Yeah. So of the 4.6 million that was eliminated, 3.6 of it was through ESSER, was to cover either it was covered under ESSER before or
And I think we board, like, why was there a decision to have basically these positions like with these one-time funds when we didn't have a plan long-term to fund them? And correct me if I'm wrong, was that also the assistant principals in elementary schools? Was that also part of that?
No.
No. Okay. So what were those positions?
Yes. So the vast majority, I think we had 80% of our ESSER funds, ESSER 3 funds went to non-positions, so non-recurring costs.
Non-recurring.
Right. But when that amount of money is $128 million. So even if you're spending a small smallish portion, 20%, which as a reminder, like 75% of our normal budget's in people, so it is hard. Typically, when you're spending money in a school district, is on personnel. So we use ESSER funds to cover roughly 20% of that were positions. So to share some of what those were, many of those were at the school level for positions we couldn't, like outsource, purchase supplies for. So social workers, the behavior interventionists you saw, those were doing direct student supports that we needed, were a big chunk. We also had directors of operations at 15 of our schools. Many of those, or a portion of those, were retained by schools who made the decisions through their budgeting process, but the others of those went away. In the central office, those were often roles to support just places we need extra excess capacity during the pandemic. So we added some recruiting members to the HR team to help supercharge some of our recruiting efforts. We did an extra router in our transportation office because we were doing summer school, after school transportation. And so I think we knew there was some risks that we wouldn't be able to fund all of those. I think we were hopeful that revenue with the city would break a different way than it has. But in many of these cases, some positions were retained, but not all. And just to highlight a little bit of the engagement we've done before we talk through some of the numbers here. We were with the school board finance and then the full board in November and December, along with our PAC and DWAC, just to share some of our early planning efforts. We've met with the city administration several times, both to talk through our current year projections as well as future projections, so they were aware of what the challenges we were facing. We began that with our PAC and our finance committee in March, and then here we are again in April. And they anticipate we'll share some of the next steps after this, but we'll be back with you in May as well as the city council.
Question, please. One of the other items that we funded with ESSER funds was the prolonged school day for teachers that was included in the most recent application. What's happening with that moving forward?
So that contract, when it expires, that extra time expires as well. So it was a significant investment. It was over $20 million. So we thought that was unlikely to be sustained after the expiration of the contract that we had. After the expiration of ESSER funds.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Quick question. In regards to positions that are being, canceled or let go in general, and then in comparison with a lot of the new positions that are opening, and seeing how much the pay has changed. Some positions have like an extra $20,000 or something like that in their pay and stuff like that. Do we have any comparison sheet for that? Just because we're going through this financial situation right now, and looking at the getting rid of positions, but then we're creating positions that are paying more than those other positions. So just trying to figure that out.
Yeah, and I don't know if you might be referring to their part of the academic reorganization. There were staff that were asked to re-interview for their roles with new roles posted. In total, that change was a reduction from 23 FTEs to 14 FTEs. And roughly $750,000 in savings, or reduction in cost. So while there might be positions that are individual positions that pay more, and I think part of the rationale was we need folks who are fully administrator certified that can go and walk side by side with principals to do evaluations that some former staff members might not have been able to do. We do think many of those individuals will reapply and be invited back to one of those roles or another role. But I think the higher pay was in recognition of some of the higher needs for those roles moving forward. But the overall change was a reduction in salaries.
Mr. President, really quick, can you explain to me really quick the budget again of how much the price was reduced? And while you do that, I know a lot of people was laid off. Can you let me know how much of that money was due to ESSER funding?
Yeah, so if I'm talking about the academics reorganization, it was 20, I think the number I had was 23 FTE down to 14. And that resulted in roughly $750,000 savings. The ESSER savings overall was a reduction in $3.6 million in salaries from the central office. Or was that what your ESSER question was really about?
I want to just mimic what board member Nina said, because, I'm just doing sort of the calculations and I'm looking and seeing like supervisor of performing arts be now a director of performing arts, supervisor of civics be now director of civics. And there's a huge salary increase in a lot of these roles. So we're now renewing a lot of these positions today, but I see all of these positions then, added on the website. Each and every position is added on this website because I'm doing the calculation. I'm trying to see where we're saving money at by non-renewing the individuals tonight.
Yeah, so we can share the kind of before and after, but I'll give you an example. So right now in the new organization structure, there's a director of math. There used to be both a math supervisor and a math coordinator. So in many of these cases, there were multiple roles supporting one subject area. So that's why you might see a director that, and I don't want to focus just on the math, but using this as an example, a director that is supervised and as an administrator can work with our principals is paid higher than the supervisor, but is overall lower cost than having two staff members up.
So really quick, so I get what you're saying. So I think my question would be, wouldn't it make sense to probably get rid of certain individual roles than try to demolish the whole department, because some of these roles still are sort of doing the same work that those supervisor roles are. We're paying a lot more money. So I don't know where we save money at. I'm just still trying to wrap my head around it. It doesn't make any sense to me.
We can share with the board the math that I did to do the savings, but in the case where just the math position I was talking about, that was going from one math position that's slightly higher than the math supervisor, going from two positions to one position, that would yield increase. So if you imagine if you're going from 23 to 14 FTEs, that's where you see.
How many of those FTEs that we're speaking of was due to ESSA funding that was let up?
I think that was part in a small portion. Like I think many of those positions.
I need numbers. I can't go by small. Go ahead.
I can give you that. I hadn't had the individual funding source for those positions.
Thank you for what you're sharing. It's really not easy, I'm sure, for anyone who's having to make these decisions. I do obviously have concerns, like everyone in the room does. I have a couple different questions. I'll keep them brief. But do we have any indication or idea of what the racial demographics of the staff members who will be most impacted by these cuts?
When we've done the preliminary analysis, the breakdown is similar to our overall staff. So
there's no overrepresentation of the specific groups who are being laid off. Do you all so I understand it makes sense to me how you would be in some ways consolidating maybe multiple roles under one that pays more but overall less, right? In terms of investing in people who are already in the district and being able to have redundancy that would allow, say, somebody coming from the community, you know what I mean, and through the ranks to be able to climb their way into a directorial role, how do you all with sort of eliminating the multiple positions that in some ways I would think could scaffold and help people, along their career trajectory, how is that going to impact people's career path, through PPSD as they want to elevate their skills? You all thought about that? Because my concern is that it will have an impact on how people are able to be, again, to bring into Han's metaphor, which is very true about Rich Norris, is that he didn't fly in, he was grown here. And I think it's really important that our district is thinking about how we're investing people who have been here, who are from here, and that we have a plan to continue to help grow folks and not just fly folks in to take who already have the skills, and the certifications. I think that's going to have an adverse impact, especially on our students of color.
It's a fair question. I think I respond in a few ways. Individuals that are reapplying have the full ability to apply and take one of these jobs. So just because someone was put up for non-renewal does not mean they can't obtain one of the jobs that's available. So that's one. I do think it is a challenge that, I think when you can have stepping stone roles, or multiple roles to support something that yields that kind of career ladder you mentioned. I think we're faced with some difficult choices where we're not sure we can sustain something like that. We're hopeful that with roles that we have at our schools that we've added, that have been retained in terms of coaches, other assistant principals at our schools, that those roles can serve as roles that people can hone their craft in on and then come and join those roles in central office. But I think in an ideal world, we would do both. It's just
I just have one more. Have you all, I've been thinking about engaged communities. When I was on the CDT redesign team, we focused on engaged communities, and coming from a place like AS 220, but not only that, just like a long line of just community-based organizations, I think about some of the financial pressures on PPSD, and also like the student services, like whether it be like translation services or student support in terms of like mental health. Has there been a process to evaluate or assess like what's in the community in ways that community-based organizations can help to maybe fill the roles potentially at a lesser cost to the district, instead of or in combination with having elevated roles, or I think there's a huge part that I don't want to say it's missing. I don't want to make assumptions, but I think when we think about engaged communities and collaboration, there's a number of community-based organizations that I think can help fill some of the gaps and support PPSD if we're authentically invited to the conversations versus just kind of being placed as like, oh, we're a flyer that like kids can go after school. But how can we bring the arts? How can we bring multilingual folks into the community? So maybe there's not a pressure to need so much translation services because there are people in the school who just speak the language. Again, it's not an assumption or a judgment. It's really a question.
So I'd share a few things, and you might know some of this, Charlie, too. But Sandy Stewart can speak to a lot of the work they've done. But some of that is getting through grants. So we have a school-based mental health grant that allows us to sustain some of our social worker positions and other things. And then there's you might have to remind me the community-based mental health organizations that we work with. Charlie, you know this?
Yeah, and I think maybe Travis might be the only person still left on the board when we've had those conversations about supplemental community organizations that would provide mental health counseling services, social emotional services for our students. I remember there was a time under, I think it was when Nick and Nina were in the board leadership, where we had an MOA and agreement with the teachers union to incorporate some of those services as part of our overall pack. But I think those community organizations are always organizations that we're looking to partner with through our Office of Community Engagement to provide additional services or wraparound services for our students at the school level. So, I don't have a comprehensive list at my fingertips about which organizations we do that with, but I know Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, after school programs that provide additional support. I think Carino or Janet Pichardo would have a better understanding of exactly all of those partnerships that we've engaged in, or Jay Lopes. Yeah, we'd probably be the contact person for that. So we could provide you with a more robust list of all those organizations that we've engaged with. But we made several efforts, and I think to Zach's point, it didn't strike me until just now, but many of those additional costs that we've incurred as a result of supporting students and supporting students' needs as they've developed over time really are attributable a lot to social media. And there is a social media lawsuit that the district is a party to through the solicitor's office, where we're one of the lead plaintiffs in social media litigation against Meta and other social media companies regarding the effect that those companies have had on kids, and the requirement of districts to spend additional money providing support for kids for their social emotional benefits as a result of the damage they've sustained from social media. So, there are ongoing costs and additional costs associated with that. We've tried to defray them through some community partnerships that we have.
Last thing I'll mention, just because you brought it, you need to remember this. One of the things we are exploring is in-housing a lot of our translation services. So one of the things we've learned, and as we reviewed data over the past few years, that the amount we spend on translation has exploded, which is great because we're reaching more of our families. But as you can imagine, I think 80% of it goes to support translation of documents into Spanish, with a smaller portion going to our other locked languages in Providence. So what we're considering is actually bringing Spanish-speaking translation in-house because we think we can do it better. It would be more kind of more like PPSD driven, potentially at least no more expensive than outsourcing it, while having to maintain some level of translation for our languages that are translated thus far.
One thing that we've done during our collective bargaining sessions with some of our various unions, including the clerical staff, is to further encourage them to gain proficiency in second language and to hire people that are bilingual and capable of doing those translation services at our schools. So we provided additional compensation for that in our last contract for those purposes.
So Ms. Aiken's earlier point, is there someone at the district whose job is out there to chase grants, apply for grants, make philanthropy contacts, major gift donors, that kind of thing?
No, but it does feel like a gap. I mean, we had a grant writer early on, but it's been a while since that position has been filled, so it's important.
And we can add to this, and I know it's like an idea and a thought, and I've been on email chains to talk further about it, but I think simple, just like having a community being able to donate online to specific schools, to specific programs, you know, I don't see why in 2024 we couldn't just do that. You know, we're trying to fund. There's a certain school. I'm in school, but there. I have someone that works there. They're paying for field trips on pocket, so there's no field trip budget. Like that's wild. That's wild. And I could talk offline, but like, and maybe it's incorrect information, but I think of that, and I hear of schools looking to do that. And, you know, I think there are appropriate opportunities as a community to be able to potentially donate online specific things.
It's very charitable of the district. But I've got a quick question. The evaluating the trade-offs with school communities. In that process, what stakeholders were included in or involved in that evaluation?
Yeah, I would say most directly it was central office, principal supervisors and principals working in very close concert on those decisions. When we did it at our best, our school leaders were then working with their school communities on that. That is an area both our school leaders and the central office need to do a better job of how we make sure that's consistently done. I know, I'm a parent in the system, and I was appreciative of the work my school leader did to bring parents in, but I know that's something we can do a little bit better job of consistently. But I think that's kind of what our goals are for the next few years of student-based budgeting, is as we're getting better at understanding actually the nuts and bolts of this, then how do you do a better job of communicating and engaging with others.
So because there was so much discretion, where it appears like there was so much discretion given to school leaders, a good thing. Is there discrepancies between schools and what some folks kept and other school communities rejected? So maybe this school kept an attendance person and this person kept a social worker. Are we seeing discrepancies like that?
Yeah, I might not use the word discrepancy, but we do see variation among schools. And I will say a few things. You know, we had some pretty strict guardrails about what people could and couldn't. So obviously you need to make sure you get adequate staffing for your special education classrooms. So we weren't allowing people to raise class sizes or things like that. We as districts committed to having every school having at least one instructional coach. We thought that was important for their turnaround plan, as well as meeting basic requirements like BEP minutes around art, music. But I think a lot of, like, if you take an elementary school, particularly ones on the smaller side, often we're deciding between either one or two of a coach, an extra coach, a second coach, a guidance counselor, or an assistant principal. Like that, those were some of the choices people were having to face. And rarely did you walk into that and say like, oh, it's an easy decision, right? It's always going to be hard, but I think we could understand that schools that had a high special ed population or something, they might were trying to retain their counselor. And so there were I think there were some thoughtful discussions about how you prioritize and looking at where the schools were at and where they need to go about which position they might be.
Further discussion on the presentation? Hearing none, thank you so much.
There's more.
Oh, we were asking questions, it was over.
Well, so I'll do my best to go through the rest again, because we'll be back. This is really to give a sense of where we are, big picture. So please, I'll be here as long as you like, but I also know other subject. So what I'll walk through now, and I'll do my best to explain it, but not take too long. I'll try to, the way these slides are addressed are kind of sequentially, or based on kind of where we started to where we are now. So what you'll see here is kind of our initial budget gap. And this was when we looked at very early on, and we made some assumptions about expense growth and revenue growth. On the revenue side, initial projections in the winter from the governor's budget had our funding formula 8 down by roughly 8 million, though there was some support from the multi-level learner categorical. But on the kind of local side, it was down 8 million. We were projecting some slight declines in miscellaneous revenue that's indirect costs and Medicaid. And then the biggest change was if we went back to flat funding. So it went from the 147 that we had in our budget to 130. So add up those revenue projections, and that was roughly 28 million to the bad on the revenue side. On our expense side, most of these things are kind of nominal increases. Salaries based on contractual increases. This is prior to any reductions. Benefits, but here I would just highlight a few things that jump out. Both special ed tuitions. This number is up by 40 to 50% over the past few years. So 7.5 million is a significant driver of the financial pressures that the district faces. Transportation is up slightly, is up 1.5 million. Though that, as we'll note in a few other slides, we expect that to go up slightly too, mostly to cover out of district transportation expenses. So take those together as a starting point. Without any changes, the gap was 45 million. So we know that's kind of the high end of what we would anticipate.
Please, quick question on the we're going to be answering to contract negotiations with the union. What was held as a big victory was extension of the school day. We have the finances to put down the table in negotiations. Is that something that we can? It seems it's priority, right? It's something that was held as a victory, but like given where we're at fiscally, like, is that even something we can put forward?
I will say time will always be a priority in our negotiations, but it does cost a lot, and I think financially we're in a difficult position to be asking for significant either extension or significant issues. So what you'll see here is similar to what we shared kind of high level with the March Finance Committee, and I'll just walk you through and then share some of the updates we've had more recently. So you see that starting gap at the top of 45 million. We've made a significant number of school-based reductions. Well, we have a slide that kind of categorizes what those are. The 1 million of the 4.6 million in central office reductions, facilities and utility savings from some of our building closure, transportation efficiencies through changes in bell times. We had started an in-house ESL certification program that we have stopped, though we will still be continuing reimbursement. And we saw some benefit savings from those staff. That's all the kind of positive on the expense side developments that we saw early on. We have seen some projected increases in out-of-district transportation, and then the investments in interpretation and translation, as well as our assessment and system platforms. Taking those together, there's roughly 12 million on the expense side. On the revenue side, we did have additional categorical funds that came in from the state. And so if you apply those to some of our existing expenses, along with a small portion of other funding sources, that yields another 16 million, cutting that gap roughly from 45 million to 60 million. So that was the number we kind of, the bottom line number we were at when we were with the finance committee in March.
Mr. Zach, the transportation efficiencies, reference to that. North Providence today just ruled that they were going to limit the transportation between a 1.5 mile radius around their city limits to reduce those costs as well. Do we anticipate any such here in this district?
So we think we'll take a few more steps than we've taken beyond the bell time changes. I don't think we're gonna change, we're not gonna change the eligibility. So we'll still keep our RIPTA eligibility where we lowered it to in the mile and a half for elementary, middle school. But two other things that we're looking to do. The first is expand the walk radius for some of our school buses. So typically, and this is something we've been looking at and it's kind of an eye-opening, is on average, an elementary student is walking a block to less than a tenth of a mile to get to their bus. But even just by expanding that to 2/10 of a mile or 3/10 of a mile, you can actually collapse bus stops and save buses. So that's not reflected in this $800,000 in savings, but that's something we're considering. We also know we are obligated to transport students to private and parochial schools in Providence, and one of the challenges is that their bell times do not align with our bell times. So we'll be reaching out to some of those organizations to see if they're willing to either accept students like 10 minutes earlier or move their bell times 10 minutes earlier, because that will allow us to better utilize our buses. So those are two things we're considering, not changing eligibility for transportation at this point.
Thank you.
So then some of the more recent updates, some of these frankly within the last 2 weeks. We had some good news on state aid in terms of both increases in enrollment over the course of the year, as well as the number of students qualifying for free and reduced lunch. So that led to a significant increase of roughly $8.7 million. The city's budget went higher than it was last year, still well below what we were anticipating. But that does contribute to some decline in our projections. We are anticipating Medicaid to go up, and so taken together, we have seen some good news on the revenue side recently, increasing to its total roughly $13 million. At the same time, we've seen some challenges more recently on the expenditure side. So one of the things to call to folks' attention is the city has been providing PPSD with roughly $1 million in energy credits, meaning we are giving credit to essentially a coupon that pays for our energy, electricity bills over the past prior to the intervention. They notified us that for next year they'll be removing those energy credits and selling them to other to outside parties. So that was, while there was an increase in $3 million on the revenue side, we have about $1 million expense hit from those energy credits. We've, based on some updates in the projections for city retirement fringe benefits, those numbers have gone up as well from what we had seen prior. And then while we had some good news on the revenue side from the March data updates from the state, the number of charter seats or the Providence students anticipated to be enrolled in charter schools next year increased beyond the March, the governor's budget, which led to a roughly $1 million increase in our expenses. So that to the negative was around $6 million, which leaves our remaining gap down from about 16 in March to a little over 9 at this moment. I think the main kind of questions we have moving forward, and I'll talk about these in the next few slides, are one, we're watching closely what the General Assembly does with categorical funding. We're, given that our funding formula aid went up, we're a bit concerned that there might be a reduction in the categorical funding, given that the state does not, I believe, have a lot more money to spend beyond what was in their original budget. So we are watching closely about the categorical funds. And so if we were not to get the increase in categorical funds we got this past year, that gap would go back up to around 16 million. And then obviously the big wild card is if we do get any more city aid beyond what was applied for. I know we are short on time, so I will go through the remaining slides quickly, but what you'll see here and what you can review on your own, these are a kind of a brief summary of what we saw for position reductions at the school level. So you see a number of reductions in specialist teachers, some scheduling reductions for our secondary teachers, and you'll see that counselors, APs, small numbers, but those were often the difficult decisions our school leaders were making. While we had declines in childcare workers and instructional aides, we did actually have to add teacher assistants as we're opening those new special education classrooms. And so those are the figures you see on the left-hand side. The right-hand side are the projected FTE savings from the school mergers and consolidations between G60 and 60, as well as Gilbert Stewart, as well as the reductions to our central office.
What is 55.8?
Those were the reductions in the FTE reductions in the central office.
You guys got 55 positions.
How many of those are included with ESSA funding?
I don't have that exact number.
Is it the majority?
No. No, I'm sorry. Yeah. So 4.6 million. 3.6 of that roughly was to cover ESSA positions.
Thank you.
So some of this we've already mentioned. Obviously, what we're going to continue to monitor is city and state revenue. One of the mechanisms we have to potentially close any remaining gaps is our fund balance. It is our funding reserves. We know the city is not obligated to cover any deficit we run, but any use of this fund is problematic because it just kind of kicks its hands down for the year. So we really want to avoid doing that. We're also continuing to monitor our major expense drivers like benefits, special education, utilities, and any additional reductions that we may need to do to balance our budget. I'll close there, just knowing that we'll be back in front of you in May to talk through more details about your book and ordinances. With that, and I'll just let people know in the back there you can see a more detailed revenue, some revenue figures if you want to review those further. With that, I'll pause and answer any further questions.
So this problem is not going to get better. I mean, enrollment forecasts are continuing to decline. So there's no more hold harmless provisions, so you're going to get less state aid. What's the long-term solution? The cities, I doubt the city's going to kick their contribution up. They're not in a situation to do that. So what are we doing? Not that I expect you to solve this. I mean, we sure it's on the radar.
We look at, we have to look at the core cost drivers of the district, and some of it, like you get to the point where you have to make some big fundamental changes. So I think we are already looking, but we'll need to continue looking at special education out of district placements. I mean, that is such a big number. Again, $7 or $8 million increase that if you can address that, you can do some pretty good damage in what becomes your deficit. It's just this vicious cycle of not being able to find staff to support those high need classrooms, and even as you add classrooms, you can't. Just that is becoming hard. So we're trying to train those folks in house, or how we staff those classrooms so that we can actually do that. We always look at transportation to see if any of the other more dramatic measures you can take can reduce costs. And obviously, and nothing for next year, but obviously you need to look at your district footprint. I mean, it's I can't beat around the bush, but you're right in that the declines are not going to. It's not that next year's going to be a whole lot better, and so we're going to have to make sure we can do as much as we can, and it's not going to be through. We pulled out a lot of the small changes we can make.
Any other questions, comments, board members?
Only a comment, and again, just empathizing with the decisions that y'all have to make, it's incredibly feels impossible, So I just want to say that thank you guys for what you're doing. It does feel, and I don't have an answer, but it does feel like what you said. It feels like it needs to be a fundamental shift in the approach of how we do public education here in Providence. And my sense tells me it does have to be more collaborative. And I know we just are talking about graduation requirements, but Providence is dealing with the pressures of what is kind of being imposed on what we need to have credits folks need to get and things like that. I just wonder what sort of rethinking on the state level we need to do in terms of what pressures we're putting on schools, so that way there can be more flexibility in terms of how we're staffing and how collaborations can happen. Because so much of it seems that the decisions are being driven by mandates and laws and decisions that are so much out of our control. And so preaching to the choir probably at this point, but I'm just I'm just wondering what type of advocacy, sort of like bigger picture design that we can be thinking about on a state level or a federal level that is severely impacting the city.
Thank you, Susan. Any further comments, questions?
Really quick, so I'm starting to come around, as it pertains to the reorg. So what you're saying is a lot of these supervisor roles are gonna be picking up a lot more tasks and duties. So is that the reason why you guys are saying they're naming those roles director roles and titles?
Yeah, I think both more duties and in most cases higher qualifications. So if I remember, the coordinator role often had you didn't have to be an administrator necessarily to be in those roles, meaning you might not be able to evaluate staff and things like that. So as a director, you will have some more high level tasks, but also have the certification that allows you to walk with the principal, supervise or evaluate a science teacher. And some staff could but that would be kind of a very qualification.
So those are the coordinator roles.
Some of the coordinator roles.
What about the supervisory roles? What do they currently do?
So
do they do something similar to the director role?
I'm sure there is some overlap in the role in terms of they're helping to support the design and curriculum and professional development. But I probably can't do it full justice. But I do know that I don't think they require, again, administrator certification, so they often didn't have, some may have been an assistant principal before, but they weren't able to always evaluate staff for long.
What was I knew you was here when we had the first reorg under Miss Dr. Bradford. What were some of those roles that we seen in teaching and learning before the state takeover that, we restructured? Was it similar to director roles or was it still supervisory roles?
No, I mean, there's been a number of changes. I think some of what I think of early on, a number of the roles early on were teaching roles that were in the central office, and obviously there were some benefits of that, but we ran into challenges where oftentimes we needed that work to be year-round, and those roles weren't always year-round. So I think early on, it wasn't they were always directors, but they might have even been like teacher roles versus an administrator.
Now, can you speak to me really quick about the new roles that are posted? Someone that may be in the district that is interested in applying for a role. Can you speak to me about the process, who would be making those final decisions? And the only reason why I say this is because central office has built, reputation on, a know-it-guy culture. Whoever you get certain job titles and, you're in favor of getting, big-time roles. So can someone speak to me who will be making these final decisions, whether these individuals have a fair shot of, getting these roles, and also understanding and knowing that none of these roles are being consolidated due to retaliation, anything like that, because it has been that way in the past. And, I've been on the board going on 4 years, the second longest after Vice President Escobar. And I do know, and, I mimicked in a lot of emails that the former vice president ended up saying there are in fact unfair, HR practices that do take place here in the district. So can you just speak to, who'll be making the final decisions on these roles, making sure that it's a fair hiring, process, and also,
I was looking around to see if Mr. James, I think he'll be joining us for executive session, so he can correct anything that I missed. But I know a few things. The positions that are posted, they'll be up for a minimum of 7 days. And then anyone who's been displaced will be, for any position they apply for or qualified for, they'll be certainly be interviewed. There'll be a panel that includes members of HR, members of the academic team, and Mr. James can say more about the other members. But I believe it would be, the chair of that committee would likely be the chief academic officer, so she should be working with members of the committee to make that decision. But anyone who's been displaced and is qualified for a role will be receiving it.
And last, and I'm gonna stop after this, we do have executive session. What I just want to sort of make a comment. What I don't want to see in this process is friends of certain individuals having, a fair shot of getting these jobs and it not being fair. I know we do have a CAO, and I don't know what district she comes from. I don't want to see a lot of people from that former district coming in, and this is just me advising, I'm just in my advisory capacity. So I advise the district not to make it a know a guy culture, and also not to, hire friends from, wherever these individuals that we're currently hiring in these chief roles to, come and get a lot of these positions. We do have a good teaching and learning department. And I think that the individuals that's currently there should have just been promoted into these roles, then, consolidating them and having them have to reapply for their job. So that's just me advising. I don't need nobody to comment after that, but that's just sort of where I'm going. But I understand that a lot of these positions, and I do now understand a lot of these positions are going to be taking on a larger task. But I do want to make sure individuals have a fair process, and retaliation does not play a role because it has in the past. So
I just want to jump in on that because I want to make sure that everyone understands that under my watch, I don't play, I know somebody. But I want to make sure that everyone's following the process and making sure that due diligence is being done. So I understand what you're saying because I want to make sure that is being followed. So I don't want the universe to think that, I know guys, like you say, I know a guy or something like that. But I prefer to ask people not who you know, but what you know. So when you come into these positions, this is why that's the process of making sure that the multiple individuals from different departments when they do these interviews.
In terms of like metrics or just like criteria when you're interviewing folks, like those like not tenure in like its normal sense, but just like, is it how are we assessing or like elevating, centering like folks who have been homegrown in the district? Do you know what I mean? Because qualifications, certifications, these are one thing, but like, when I think about what is most interesting and compelling and needed from community and families is like, we want to make sure it's folks who understand our young people, who understand the culture, who understand Providence, who've already invested. And so I just wonder, are there any extra like points or like considerations for folks who are coming? Is there a way to center people who've already invested here versus like kind of gentrifying our system? Not that that's the intention, but that can easily happen when we're trying to like recruit different folks. Like, how do we not bring in people from all over the place and kind of overlook the folks who have been here putting in work?
Many ways you can do that. I think some of it is obviously normal how you have a standard interview, but I think a lot of what I know makes a good interview process and that we're considering here are performance tasks and other things that allow people maybe you want to suss out people who are just good at interviewing versus people who have a track record of success of working with our students or students like those in Providence. And so I think having performance tasks and other evidence to show what people have done in the past can really speak volumes, and ideally that lets people who've worked with our students already shine. But it also lets us know who's best equipped to work with our students.
how about would the equity office be on a lot of these hires? Now, when I say that, it's due to the fact of, we want to talk about fairness. That includes equity and diversity, belonging, inclusion. How involved would that office be? And that, then gets to the fact of, me just being concerned that there's only one individual within that department. And when we're talking about a level of fairness for a large district that we have, that's the reason why it's important, Mr. President, to approve a capacity of people within that department that could, bring forth this work and making sure there's a level of fairness, not only on the elementary to high school level, but also in the central office. So how involved would that department be?
I mean, I don't know if they've been part of the interview committee, but it's something we could consider.
But I don't even think that they should just be a part of the, and I'm done after this, I promise, I keep saying it. I don't think that they only should, be involved in the interview committee, but they should have a large say so as it pertains to fairness being, sort of done in the district.
The design of the process.
Right, the design of the process. They should be involved with the design of it. So, and I'm not here to put anybody on the spot in any other position. I'm just saying that's the nature of it.
I was gonna ask, I know there's gonna be like a lot of new positions or positions are gonna be changed from supervisor to director or anything like that. Is there anything in place to help prepare people that are already within the school system for those roles through mentorship or anything like that? Not just telling them, oh, you need these credits or you need this degree, but some sort of like mentorship or a way to prepare them for those roles instead of having to hire from outside, and we can hire up from within.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to say we don't have a formal mentoring process.
So yes, we have put in place a resume building workshop for all internal employees. We're also doing an interview skills training to certainly support them with interviewing techniques, et cetera. Going back to your question about what does that process look like, to Zach's point, we're going to use a varied approach. And when I mean a varied approach, you have the traditional interview questions, but you also have performance tasks. And there's more than one level of interviews as well, because you're trying to find that best fit candidate. So you just don't want to settle with that first round of interviews. You certainly want to identify who are the top candidates from that first round, and then move to a second round and look at selecting the best fit from there. Yes, equity is involved with our process. Our chief of equity is behind me. She can tell you that HR and equity work together to look at processes and look at interview questions. She's part of our committees, and she participates and supports the work that we do in looking at the process of selecting candidates within our district.
And I appreciate that. I think the only thing I'm saying is, because now, it's concerning that equity is involved, but, when I look at, I hate to say it, the demographics, it doesn't sort of show that. So it's kind of tough for me to take that at face value. It's kind of tough.
Understood, but please understand that human resources is using a fair, equitable process. And we're the gatekeepers for this process within PPSC.
Absolutely.
And all applications, job postings, applications, interview process is done through my office.
Absolutely.
And it's done through a process where we don't have any other persons involved with that. We're very strict with how we do that protocol in interviewing candidates, ensuring that HR is there, ensuring that we have equity as a part of that process. So it's fair and equitable.
But that's the concern. I think, even building that HR process that you have, which is very strict in your office, equity should be involved with the building of that process. It's very important.
Absolutely.
It's in other districts.
I agree with you 100%. And she is. She's a part of working with me and my team.
But I'm just saying, I'm so sorry.
I feel like the point's been made by Mr. Stevens.
The data, what I'm saying is the data doesn't show that, it doesn't back up what you're saying. Because when I look at demographics, even within the teaching and learning, those demographics do not show that.
Mr. President, would it be too much or appropriate to request at a later date that we can have a presentation on what that process actually looks like? Because I do think that there is a transparency issue, and not that that's intentional, but it would be nice to know, even if there's a rubric on what folks are being considered by, how things are weighted, what is that process? I think it would be in our interest to know.
Very appropriate.
And we all receive concerns. It's not just me. We all receive concerns about transparency issues. So
we would love to bring that information back.
Mr. Nino? Yeah, Mr. President, is it possible to get some information on regarding the hiring specifically? We have a lot of teachers, just because of the community and transparency, there's a lot of people being, non-renewed, and they're applying for new positions, and maybe later in the future they maybe seeing a balance of how many of those teachers actually were rehired instead of external teachers. And I think that would help a lot with some of the information.
Absolutely. I think that's an appropriate request. Any final comments? Questions?
Just a quick question as well. For any employees that are not rehired or not, transferred, are you providing any assistance with helping them find new opportunities?
Is this on? Yes. Yes, we're certainly supporting. We're encouraging those employees to look for opportunities within our district, but we're also encouraging them to look for opportunities externally as well. We don't want them to keep all their options with PPSD. Any position that they apply for within our district, I have informed them they should contact Human Resources, and Human Resources will work with them to grant an interview for those individuals, because we want to ensure that we try to retain those employees within the district.
I just want to make, actually, we have new ones working. I just want to make sure that it's also clear, board members, that at this moment, there are three, but there are going to be two individuals so far working in the equity office. So it's not, I heard one, that it's gonna be two.
Thank you. So what's the second one?
Dr. Onye, which is the second, it's yourself, and then the next one?
Dr. Diaz,
Dr. Diaz.
who's the EEO officer.
What is it? What is it?
EEO officer. Title IX.
Title IX doesn't deal with equity. It doesn't. Title IX has to deal with the whole district. It doesn't deal directly with.
It actually does. It's federal law.
But Dr. Onye is going to have to do a lot of the groundwork by herself. They're not going to be able to do a lot of the work that she does behind the scenes, strategically working with HR and other different things. They're going to be busy. She's not going to have no time to probably even meet with the individual.
Thank you. Any final comments? Just be careful with those performance tests. AI is running rampant out there. Just plug yourself in. All right. We're going to take a vote to enter into executive session, and I want to explain to the public what that means. So in executive session, we're going to be discussing confidential information that pertains to personnel matters, people's personnel record is one of the items. And then the second item has to do with information related to student privacy concerns that, we share student contact information, or student names, student identifying information that we're not allowed to do in the public setting. So we're going to discuss those items in executive session, which means in private, not in an open forum. We're going to take votes on the matters, or the second item doesn't necessitate a vote. Then we exit executive session and we'll report on any action that was taken in executive session. We can't share the specific details about what we discussed because it is confidential, but what we can say is something very general that summarizes. For example, if we're discussing student privacy, a student safety incident, we'll discuss that we reviewed the policy with the director, that we ensured the policy was followed, and that the outcome was a desirable outcome. We can share something along those levels. I just want to ensure that we're not trying to hide anything. These executive session is triggered by legal requirement when we discuss certain matters. And counsel, correct me if I've stated anything that's incorrect.
No, that's absolutely correct, Mr. Chair. So there's two purposes for which that the board would go into executive session this evening. The first purpose is to discuss a personnel matter pursuant to 4246-5A1 relative to administrator contract non-renewals. And the second purpose is pursuant to 4246-5A3 to discuss matters of school security. So those are the two express purposes. So there's no discussion that's warranted. I think it would be appropriate to take a motion to go into executive session for those two purposes.
Do I have a motion to enter executive session?
Motion.
Motion by Ms. Aiken. Second by Secretary Hughes. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
And just to be clear, that stands for those two specific purposes.
For 12.1 and 12.2 executive session pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42-46-4 and 42-46-5A1 personnel administrator non-renewals. And item 12.2 executive session pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws section 42-46-5A3 discussion regarding the matter of security. So I have a motion. I have a second. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Here. I'm tired of my. Yay.
Tyrell Stevens.
Was it I? Is it I? I'm sorry. I was going to say president.
19 Mahinda. Travis Escobar. Earl Mobley.
Aye.
Melissa Hughes.
Aye.
Tony Aiken. Aye. George Matua. Michael Williams.
Aye. We have entered executive session, and I believe, Mr. Counsel, that only
We're going to clear the room first.
They would like to go in for purposes of the school.
End stream, correct, Martha?
Yes.